Hey everyone! What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Fusion Deck User in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 521, The Legendary Brothers. A few days later, Hikaru and his group boarded a plane to the Princeton Group headquarters. Besides Hikaru and the others, Serena and Lulu came along too, treating it as an extracurricular activity to let Lulu observe, and to give Serena a chance to unwind. On the plane, Chaz briefed Hikaru on the status of his earlier duel footage. The duel with Leo Akiba, I cut it into two versions. One went to the master, and the other to the other seniors for review. He explained the details. Cards like the Earthbound Immortals, the Sacred Beasts, the Numbers, and the card Hikaru had played at the very end that had shredded the imaging system entirely, only restoring after Armityle the Chaos Phantasm appeared, none of those were suitable for public viewing. The Sacred Beasts especially. The less people knew about those cards, the better. Beyond that, Pendulum as an entirely new card type had piqued Seto Kaiba's interest greatly. More importantly, because of Hikaru's duel, Kaiba seemed to have finally confirmed what that most recently discovered dimension was hiding. So it was the Pendulum dimension, the P dimension. It had been well hidden. You might end up becoming our dimension's Pendulum pioneer. Chaz spread his hands in front of him, venting to Hikaru. Though you're already famous enough in our dimension. After all, you weren't the first person to use Synchro here, but you were the first to use Synchro for fusion. I guarantee, once people find out about this, your followers are going to get even more fanatical. Fanaticism isn't always a good thing. Hikaru shook his head at that. Being admired was something he secretly enjoyed, sure. But that didn't mean he wanted his fans or club members to worship him fervently or imitate him obsessively. He didn't want people arguing on his behalf, and he certainly didn't want someone using his name to belittle others someday. That would defeat the entire purpose. Jaden was very curious about Pendulum, but Hikaru just shook his head and told him it wasn't usable yet. Although he had Leo Akiba's legacy and had run tests, unfortunately, he couldn't even use Starving Venom Fusion Dragon at the moment. As it stood, the reason Leo Akiba had been able to successfully use Pendulum monsters wasn't simply because he possessed Pendulum cards. There was another important factor: he himself had certain qualities. It was very likely some trait unique to specific individuals like Serena and Yugo. Hikaru alone couldn't do it. Unless Pendulum was fully and completely born in the future, there was no way to use it normally. But in any case, Kaiba Corp was gradually coming to understand the relevant details. Jaden could only wait in anticipation for the day he'd see Pendulum in action. Additionally, Hikaru mentioned that the dimensional gate he'd constructed using alchemy had passed multiple tests and was now operational. If anyone had places they were interested in visiting, they could try using the dimensional gate in the fusion wing. Oh! A dimensional gate just for our department? That's awesome, I can't wait. Jaden replied excitedly. A dimensional gate, huh? That works. There are a few locations that don't meet the school's requirements. Chaz thought for a moment and nodded. They arrived at the Princeton Group headquarters. From the exterior alone, it was even more lavish and massive than Kaiba Corp. That alone made clear that the Princeton Group certainly had ambition. Upon entering, Chaz's two older brothers opened with their customary jabs at their younger sibling. Then, without further ado, things got underway. First up was Atticus Rhodes versus the Princeton Group's representative duelist. Hikaru looked and didn't recognize the opponent. Not a legendary duelist, but apparently a professional duelist whose ranking score was higher than Aster's in the World Pro Circuit. Higher than Aster Phoenix? Jaden and Chaz were taken aback. The former had actually dueled Aster and genuinely lost to him. The latter had long known Aster by reputation and had previously studied Hikaru's duel against Aster to analyze Hikaru's deck, well aware that Aster was an extremely difficult opponent. If it were him, he'd struggle to figure out how to beat the combination of Destiny Hero, Plasma and Destiny End Dragoon. And this duelist ranked even higher than Aster Phoenix? Hearing this, Hikaru just shook his head. High scores meant nothing. What mattered was the person's actual strength. In the original series, there were plenty of Pro League duelists who outranked Aster on paper, but when it came to actual duels, they went down without a whimper. Just like that Pro Duelist X who had dueled Hikaru in the Fusion Wing, he'd scored higher than Aster too and was supposedly a pro nobody could beat in their first match. And look how that turned out. However, what Hikaru hadn't expected was that partway through the duel, Atticus genuinely looked like he was about to lose. Fortunately, at the very moment it seemed like defeat was imminent, Atticus pulled off a dramatic comeback. He survived one turn thanks to a trap card, then wiped his brow, coughed twice, and called out to the audience, "Alright, here comes the reversal. Everyone, keep your eyes wide open." Then he quickly tributed a monster to summon Simorg, Bird of Sovereignty, used its effect to clear the field and recover resources, and claimed victory. After it was over, he wiped away non-existent cold sweat and, seeing three stunned juniors staring at him, quickly struck a pose of total composure, gave a thumbs up, and managed a strained smile. The rules for this representative battle stipulated that the proxy duels had to conclude before the family head duel. So both the 1 vs 1 and 2 vs 2 had to be won for Chaz to get his chance to face his two brothers. If Atticus had lost right out of the gate, Hikaru and Jaden wouldn't even need to take the field. Backstage, Atticus was frantically wiping away his very real cold sweat. That was close. He'd nearly gone too far. Lately, he'd been studying entertainment dueling, the art of guiding the audience's emotions through performance, life point fluctuations, and the shifting probabilities of victory, executing reversals and other dramatic moments. But he might have been a bit too eager to try it out. By the end, he'd painted himself into a corner on the edge of a cliff. Forget entertainment, it was more like a horror show, giving Hikaru and the others a collective heart attack. Still, despite the hiccup, he'd won in the end. All he could do was wipe the sweat from his forehead and remind himself that he still needed more practice and refinement. Then he tossed the whole incident out of his mind, slung his camera around his neck, headed to the Scenery Corp viewing area, and started cheering, "Go Hikaru! Go Jaden," while getting ready to take photos. If I could be as carefree as Atticus-senpai, life would probably be so much easier and worry-free. Serena watched Atticus's antics and couldn't help but sigh. Why yeah, I suppose. Even Lulu could only nod along at the sight. She wasn't very familiar with the people of this world. She was simply here to observe what dueling looked like in this dimension. In any case, now that the 1 vs 1 was over, it was time for the 2 vs 2. Some famous GX tournament competitor, and he nearly lost? Within the Princeton group, several men who appeared to be Chaz's uncles were murmuring among themselves. If the help Junes brought is only at this level, there's hardly any point, is there? Exactly. The opponents we've prepared next are legendary duelists. Legendary duelists? Lulu was hearing this strange term for the first time. In her world, no such title or designation existed. Just as she was thinking this, Hikaru and Jaden had already equipped their duel discs. Hikaru's high-tech duel disc caught the attention of several Princeton group members, who couldn't help but whisper among themselves. That duel disc, isn't that the same type June has? Wait, I know this guy. Isn't he the one who competed against June for the championship? It's the GX tournament champion, Hikaru. Ruthless, June. To secure the family head position, you even brought in your own rival? Chaz's second eldest brother was watching from the sidelines, genuinely surprised to see Hikaru take the field. Hikaru bowed politely and greeted them, then explained that while he was Chaz's rival in competition, they were close friends in their everyday academic lives. Fair enough. There's something to be said for mutual respect between rivals. Chaz's second brother was straightforward enough and didn't dwell on it. Taking advantage of the moment, Lulu asked Serena what the GX tournament champion was. Serena immediately puffed out her chest and began explaining what the title represented: the world's best, the genius among geniuses, the most talented duelist of their generation, the king of duelists among the young. That was Hikaru. Her master. He was that amazing? Well, of course, he should be that amazing. Lulu recalled the duel she'd witnessed Hikaru fight and nodded deeply. Whether it was the duel against Crow or the duel against Leo Akaba, Hikaru had been confident and resolute, with unwavering convictions. Having a title like that didn't seem strange at all. Who's the other one from Slifer Red? What did he place in the GX tournament? Never seen him. Doesn't look like he made it to the finals. That kid June, he's going easy on his brothers, huh? Bringing in a champion and some nobody? Several Princeton group elders began muttering again. Hearing this, Lulu glanced curiously at Jaden. Serena, on the other hand, looked slightly embarrassed after catching those remarks. Which only made Lulu more curious, so she asked. Serena's answer was simple: the only reason Jaden had no ranking was because he hadn't entered. If Jaden had participated, who the champion would have been was anyone's guess. That strong? Lulu understood instantly. In other words, Chaz had never considered saving face for his brothers at all. The duelists he'd invited were, from the start, the strongest duo available. His goal was to make his brothers look utterly foolish. Well, obviously. If he wasn't aiming to decisively win, why would Chaz have issued the challenge in the first place? Just as the two were getting ready, suddenly, two loud shouts of "HAH" rang out. Two men in Chinese-style robes leapt high onto the dueling platform, performed a somersault, relay vaulted off each other in midair, then crossed positions and landed in a synchronized pose. The two were identical twins, dressed in Chinese robes of different colors. The one on the left had Mei written on his forehead and wore orange. The one on the right had Q written on his forehead and wore green. They were none other than two of the famed legendary duelists, the legendary tag duel specialists, the Paradox Brothers. We are the wandering gatekeepers. They stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, staring down Hikaru and Jaden. Wow, they look alike too. Lulu. Serena called out to Lulu excitedly. Lulu, however, noted that these two were clearly actual twins, quite different from her and Serena's situation. They're duelists who once faced the legendary king of games, Yugi Muto himself. They gave both Yugi Muto and Joey Wheeler a run for their money. They're not the kind of opponents just any duelist can beat. Chaz's second eldest brother smirked. Oh! Gasps of amazement erupted from the onlookers. Reporters began snapping photos furiously, and even Atticus couldn't resist photographing the two bald men. Although Lulu didn't know who they were, hearing the title King of Games was enough for her to grasp their historical significance, and she let out an exclamation of her own. TCH, so what if they're legendary duelists? Just as she was marveling, from the spectator seats not far away, a slightly thin young man with his hands shoved in his pockets spoke coldly. Duelists are judged by strength. It's no big deal. Whoa, Rex-senpai. Hearing his voice, Serena looked over and was surprised to discover that tagging along with the Scenery Corp camera crew was none other than Rex Raptor. We bear you no grudge. Fight us with all your might. The two spoke one line each, extending their arms to form an X cross, then declared in unison. Defeat us, and the path shall open. Now then, duel. Gong. A strange gong sounded. This was the Paradox Brothers' classic opening. Reportedly, even the king of games Yugi Muto himself had been startled by their entrance back in the day. After the iconic introduction, reporters went absolutely wild with their cameras. Oh, as expected of legendary duelists. What presence! The Princeton group elders applauded enthusiastically. The Paradox Brothers then turned their gaze to Hikaru and Jaden. As we said, we bear no grudge. However, Jaden, during the dormitory duel last time, you certainly gave us a thorough lesson. Ha, being remembered by legendary duelists? I'm truly honored. Jaden grinned and scratched the back of his head. Back when Hikaru had first arrived in this world, Jaden and Cyrus had been punished for breaking academy rules and forced into a dormitory duel, lose, and they'd be expelled. Their opponents at the time had been the Paradox Brothers. The Paradox Brothers didn't seem upset. May let out a cold chuckle and said, "We're mercenary duelists. As long as it's a 2 versus 2, we're happy to accept any invitation from anyone in the world. However, this time, we came on our own initiative. Because we heard you might be taking the field." Since the spirit world favored tag duels as a way to test duelists' fighting spirit and synergy, tag dueling had gradually become formalized and popular in the human world as well. A famous super duo like the Paradox Brothers naturally had many organizations eager to hire them, so their lifestyle was quite comfortable and carefree. Honestly, because life had been too comfortable, they hadn't felt the burning drive to improve like Rex Raptor had. As a result, they'd lost to Jaden and Cyrus in that dormitory duel, drawing considerable skepticism from many. It was precisely because of that loss that the two had abandoned their old ways and urgently begun researching new strategies and playstyles. Leveraging their status as legendary duelists, their astronomical market value, and the connections that let them thrive anywhere in the world, the two had spent the past year completely overhauling their decks. All for one purpose: revenge. Simply put, to defeat Jaden and prove themselves. While Cyrus wasn't here this time, having Hikaru as a partner meant the brothers weren't exactly bullying anyone. So they didn't hide their intentions, laying everything out openly. "Ha, I really am popular, aren't I?" Jaden said cheerfully. In the past, that would have been the end of it. But this time he pivoted, turning to Hikaru. "Sorry about this, Hikaru. Looks like you'll be facing opponents tougher than what you should have gotten." Hikaru couldn't help but smirk. "Ha, I've been wanting to face the famous Paradox Brothers for a long time, so it's no problem. Besides, didn't you say you're super strong right now?" Ha ha ha. The two bantered back and forth. "So then, are you ready?" the Kaibacorp referee announced. Of course. All four duelists spoke. The rules follow the Spirit World standard tag duel format. Life points, 8,000. Battle phase is permitted starting from the second turn. Both teams share their field zones. Monster zones, spell and trap zones, and banished cards. The Kaibacorp referee raised a red flag and called out the rules. And now. Duel. Times 4. Jaden Yuki and Hikaru LP, 8,000. Paradox Brothers LP, 8,000. Chapter 522, In the Maze. The first turn began with Jaden. My turn, draw. Jaden drew a card and looked down carefully at the 6 cards in his hand. Although he still dueled by instinct, he had been honed by now and would no longer play the first card he saw. Moreover, before the duel officially began, there was something he wanted to say. He looked at his hand and sighed. It feels like only yesterday when I think back to our first tag duel. That tag duel, one that seemed like fate, guiding him and Hikaru toward their respective paths, replayed before his eyes like a videotape. Why are you suddenly getting sentimental, Jaden? That's not like you, Hikaru said. Didn't you say you're super strong now? Being sentimental doesn't seem super strong. Ah, ha 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 ha. Jaden scratched the back of his head and chuckled awkwardly, then grew serious, shedding his usual demeanor. No, perhaps, this is who I am now. Hikaru heard this and opened his mouth, but said nothing. However, no matter what, one thing is certain. I am super strong now. Excitement spread across his face. If you're not careful, you'll lose in an instant. What are you two going on about? Are you dueling or not? Chaz's second brother shouted. These two students are just getting sentimental, May said. Humph, it seems this kid has encountered the labyrinth of his own heart, Q added. Chaz's brows furrowed tightly. Listening to Jaden's words, he had a strange and unsettling feeling that something was about to happen. He could only hope it was his imagination. All right, I'll go first. Jaden knew a couple of sentimental remarks were enough, no need to dwell on it mid-duel. he immediately revealed his ace. Normal summon elemental hero Bubbleman. The classic blue hero appeared with a flourish, cape swirling. Although the deck had changed a lot, one thing never would. That was summoning Bubbleman on an empty field. A hero deck? A pretty common deck. A hero deck? Serena was a little surprised. Even in her dimension, such an old archetype existed. She hadn't expected Hikaru's partner to use this deck. When Bubbleman is summoned while I control no other cards, I draw 2 cards. He drew 2 cards, then revealed a card from his hand. Next, I activate the spell card EN Shuffle. Return 1 elemental hero or Neospatian monster from my field to the deck, and special summon 1 elemental hero or Neospatian with a different name from my deck. I return Bubbleman to the deck and special summon elemental hero Stratos. The classic Stratos appeared with a flourish, wings spinning with fierce winds. Elemental hero Stratos level 4, Wind, Warrior, ATK 1800. When Stratos is normal or special summoned, I can add 1 hero card from my deck to my hand. I add elemental hero Liquid Soldier. Not bad, Hikaru nodded beside him. This special Bubbleman opening by Jaden was much more comfortable than using a hero lives, which halves your LP to summon Stratos. After getting Liquid Soldier, Jaden chuckled, holding up his fusion card. This hero will send shivers down everyone's spine. Along with his declaration, white cold air permeated the entire duel field. The audience unconsciously pulled at their clothes. Stratos on the field and Liquid Soldier in Jaden's hand began to combine. Finally, they transformed into a pure white hero, like Frost. Fusion Summon. Level 8 Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. Elemental Hero Absolute Zero Level 8, Water, Warrior, ATK 2500. Oh! What a cool monster! After Absolute Zero appeared, even some people who weren't particularly interested in heroes were won over by its appearance. When Liquid Soldier is sent to the GY as fusion material for a hero monster, I draw 2 cards, then discard 1. Jaden drew 2 cards, looked them over, and sent 1 to the graveyard. Spell card, Neos Fusion. Send fusion materials from my deck to the GY, and special summon 1 fusion monster that lists exactly 2 specific monsters including Neos as material from my extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. After this card resolves, I cannot special summon for the rest of this turn. I send Elemental Hero Neos and Elemental Hero Shadow Mist from my deck to the GY. Special summon Elemental Hero Brave Neos. Neos spun through the air, leaping from Jaden's deck. Then he struck a heroic pose, looking quite imposing. Elemental Hero Brave Neos Level 7, Light, Warrior, ATK 2500. Brave Neos gains 100 ATK for each Neospatian and hero monster in my GY. In my graveyard, Jaden held up several cards. Stratos, Liquid Soldier, Neos, Shadow Mist, and the discarded hero, 5 cards total. Elemental Hero Brave Neos ATK, 2500-3000. Not only that, Shadow Mist's effect. When sent to the GY, I add 1 hero monster from my deck to my hand, except Shadow Mist. I add Elemental Hero Solid Soldier. Although it wasn't quite the same build, it had to be said that Jaden's current cards, compared to Hikaru's hero deck before coming to this world, didn't seem to lack any core cards. Even Shadow Mist was here. I set 2 cards and end my turn. After setting his cards, Jaden smiled at Hikaru, as if asking, "Am I strong now?" "So strong." 2 high-level monsters appeared so easily, exclaimed a spectator. Humph, as expected, June couldn't just find some random student to fill the slot. Can't underestimate him. Chaz's second brother also put away his earlier complacency. "Heh, is that all?" 1 at 2500, 1 at 3000. In the past, they would indeed have been considered an impenetrable wall. But now, for us, they're nothing. The Paradox brothers spoke with a hint of provocation. Hikaru glanced at Jaden's set cards, slightly surprised. Then he checked the graveyard and was even more surprised. What is this card? He'd never seen it. He quickly scanned the card effects. By then, it was the Paradox brothers' turn. My turn, draw. May drew a card and sneered. I activate the normal spell, Planet Pathfinder. Oh. Hikaru saw this card and nodded slightly. If he could play this card, he would definitely include several copies in his deck. Whether it was to search for Dreamland or a fusion-related field spell, it would be an excellent choice. Planet Pathfinder's effect: add one field spell from my deck to my hand. A field spell? Jaden was quite surprised. I've never heard of the Gate Guardian series having a field spell. This is precisely the power we brothers gained through our training. In reality, it was a brand new card that the two had acquired at great expense, collaborating with various companies and collecting from multiple dimensions to strengthen their deck. I add Labyrinth Wall Shadow to my hand. The two brothers exchanged a glance and nodded. Then May raised the card and shouted, "Witness it! The labyrinth formed by the confusion and bewilderment within your hearts. Activate the field spell, Labyrinth Wall Shadow." Boom, boom, boom. As he activated it, countless walls emerged on the duel field, gradually enveloping the entire area. Soon, Hikaru found that towering labyrinth walls had risen all around him, completely obscuring Jaden from view. Only Q remained in front of him, grinning. Hikaru frowned slightly and called out, but Jaden didn't respond. It seemed this labyrinth had directly cut off their communication. There was truly a lot to learn about tag dueling. In this world, the Paradox brothers were indeed famous tag duelists, capable of even this. The spectators had broadcasting devices provided by Kaiba Corp, allowing them to see whichever duelist each camera was tracking. Serena and Lulu saw that Hikaru only tried briefly to make contact before calmly giving up, so they weren't too worried. Other spectators, however, were surprised and delighted by this novel duel. It's different from previous duels. The effect of Labyrinth Wall Shadow. Once per turn, during your main phase, you can target one of Senga of the Thunder, Kazejin, or Suijin from your hand, deck, or banished zone, and place it in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. I place Senga of the Thunder from my deck in my spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. A giant creature with the character for Thunder floated above the labyrinth, scrutinizing those within. Oh. He's pulling Senga of the Thunder straight from the deck like that? What a brand new tactic! Jaden said, visibly excited. Listening to the sound, Hikaru deduced that only the voices of the duelists during their turn could be transmitted beyond the labyrinth walls. I see. Because the Paradox brothers were twin duelists who thought as one, they were better at coordination than partners with differing personalities, like the Amazonas sisters. So even without voice transmission, they could still anticipate what the other wanted to do, and didn't need to worry about the communication block. Meanwhile, their opponents' voices couldn't reach each other through the labyrinth, meaning there might be moments where Hikaru and Jaden's cooperation wasn't perfect. Was that roughly the gist? It's not over yet, Jaden. Although May had lost to Jaden before, he didn't hold a grudge. He simply wanted to prove himself. This card can be normal summoned without tributing. Normal summon, Labyrinth Heavy Tank. A small blue tank with a spinning drill sped out from the depths of the labyrinth. The moment Jaden saw this monster, he exclaimed. Labyrinth Heavy Tank Level 7, Dark, Machine, ATK 2400. Oh, isn't this your favorite Labyrinth Heavy Tank? This card can even evolve. Tiara's eyes lit up. We should hurry and try it out, right? She was getting excited. A level 7 Labyrinth Heavy Tank that can be normal summoned without tributing? That feels way more convenient than the fusion version. Jaden was clearly familiar with this monster as well. Not only that, the effect of Labyrinth Heavy Tank: during your main phase, you can target one of the 3 Gate Guardian components from your hand, deck, or banished zone, and place it on your field as a continuous spell. I choose Suijin. A monster with a massive chin and the character for water on its head stomped through the labyrinth with a rumble, appearing before everyone. Not only that, when Labyrinth Wall Shadow is on the field, after Labyrinth Heavy Tank places a Gate Guardian component, it can also destroy one monster on the opponent's field. Vanish, Neos. No way, Neos fusion in the graveyard can be banished to prevent the destruction of a fusion monster that used Neos as fusion material. Oh, it has that effect too, May was mildly surprised. It's not over yet. Seeing the opponent had finished, Jaden immediately activated a set card. I don't know why you're using the Gate Guardian pieces as continuous spells, but as long as I destroy them, it's fine. Jaden decisively activated his set card. Quick play spell, Mask Change. What, Mask Change? That's right. The effect of Mask Change. Target one hero monster on the field, confirm that monster's attribute, and send it to the graveyard. Then special summon one masked hero with the same attribute from my extra deck. I send Elemental Hero Absolute Zero from the field to the graveyard and special summon from my extra deck. Masked Hero Acid. Here it comes. Hikaru's eyes lit up at the sight. Old, but classic. Ice swept through the entire labyrinth, and strange acid gradually coated the walls, which began to melt as if everything was dissolving. This was the entrance of that masked hero. Masked Hero Acid Level 8, Water, Warrior, ATK 2600. The effect of Masked Hero Acid: when this card is special summoned, destroy all spell and trap cards on your opponent's field, and all monsters your opponent controls lose 300 ATK. And then, the effect of Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. When this card leaves the field, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. What? Doesn't that mean it destroys everything on the field? How powerful. At this point, the onlookers finally realized that Hikaru's teammate was definitely not someone Chaz had just grabbed at random. In fact, since Chaz dared to pair him with Hikaru, how could this student be a weakling? He had simply been keeping a low profile. Chaz's second brother took a sharp breath at the sight. The labyrinth began to dissipate. All cards on the field either dissolved or froze, a sorry sight. Just as he was worrying for the Paradox brothers, he noticed that the brothers showed no sign of alarm, and were instead chuckling. Destroying both spells and monsters at the same time? Jaden, it seems you've grown much stronger since that dormitory duel, but don't think we've been standing still. The Paradox brothers suddenly reached out and crossed their arms simultaneously. We brothers are invincible. Kid Jaden, this tactic of yours isn't like your usual style. It seems you're still trapped in the labyrinth of your own heart, just like now. Field spell Labyrinth Wall Shadow. What? A second one. Jaden hadn't expected this at all. Even Hikaru was startled. What a draw! The effect of Labyrinth Wall Shadow has no once per turn restriction. Therefore, the effect of the second copy can still be activated. I place the last Kazajan from my deck as a continuous spell on my field. As May explained, the labyrinth rose again, and a towering wall appeared once more between Hikaru and Jaden. He gathered all three? But two are in the graveyard, so he can't special summon Gate Guardian, right? Besides, Kazajan is a continuous spell right now, it shouldn't be usable, right? As legendary duelists, the audience was mostly familiar with the Paradox Brothers cards. Naive. The Paradox brothers shouted simultaneously. I banish Sangha of the Thunder and Suijin from the graveyard, and Kazajan from the field. Special summon from the extra deck. The two assumed mirrored poses. Gate Guardian combined. 3 Gate Guardian components flew up from the graveyard and field. Thunder became the head, water became the limbs, and wind was the connecting point in the middle. The 3 monsters combined, roaring simultaneously with extraordinary power, making Hikaru and Jaden in the distant labyrinth feel as if they were facing a judge. Thunder, storms, and currents, multiple elements swirled through the labyrinth, making their clothes flutter in the gale. Both duelists had to shield themselves with their arms. Gate Guardian combined level 12, Dark, Warrior, ATK 3750. Hikaru frowned. This monster was going to be troublesome. Chapter 523, a real card. ATK 3750. Far above Blue Eyes White Dragon. Worthy of legendary duelists, it looked insanely strong. Several of Chaz's relatives who'd come to watch gasped in awe at the monster's entrance. They didn't understand duels, but they understood numbers, and they knew a fusion monster that could hit the field by banishing cards straight from the graveyard was no weakling. When Rex Raptor saw the summon, his earlier indifference melted away. He'd watched other duels of the Paradox Brothers before, and back then this monster hadn't appeared. Seemed these two had finally felt the sting of shame and gotten serious, overhauling plenty of their deck. In that case, Hikaru's side might be in for a tougher fight than expected. Oh! Gate Guardian evolved too. Jaden couldn't help cheering. Didn't know you could contact Fuse by banishing from the graveyard, that's a step beyond Neos. Humph, kid, you're not the only one in the world who improves. May lifted a finger, tapped his forehead, and declared, battle phase. Gate Guardian combined attacks Brave Neos. Brave Neos gained 100 ATK for every hero in the graveyard, bringing it to 3,100. But Gate Guardian combined was still stronger. All three heads on Gate Guardian's body gathered power. Spheres of lightning, storm, and water erupted together, dragging the armored Neos into the depths of the maze. Hikaru and Jaden LP 8000-7350. Ha, end turn. The Paradox Brothers folded their arms in perfect unison, as if that settled everything. Leaving only one monster on the field won't beat Hikaru that easily, Jaden said. Ha, this isn't just one monster. Q wagged a finger. Like your Absolute Zero, Gate Guardian combined isn't that simple. Same as Absolute Zero? Jaden's pupils shrank. What did that mean? Whatever hidden trick lay behind it, it was now Hikaru's turn. Jaden finally heard Hikaru's voice again, but after only a few words, and a reminder that Hikaru could use his cards, he realized Hikaru wasn't answering. Ha, your partner's a lot sharper than you. Q chuckled. Still haven't noticed? He can't hear you. So that's how it is. Jaden understood. The maze was built for that? Interesting. Want to test our teamwork? Jaden laughed. Then you're in for a surprise. Hikaru is a duelist who chases the ultimate fusion, and a tag duel is precisely a fusion of hearts and minds between partners. Hikaru won't make a mistake. Oh? Hearing that, the Paradox Brothers looked slightly surprised. Such trust in a partner? Chaz blinked, muttering, Jaden actually said something philosophical? Rex Raptor kept nodding. The kid had brains. If Chaz had heard that, he'd wonder if he'd fallen into a parallel world. Lulu remarked that Hikaru had good friends, both Chaz and Jaden seemed amazing. Jaden said that? Serena murmured from the stands. Knowing full well the two couldn't communicate, she'd been worried they'd misplay, yet here was Jaden, brimming with confidence and trust. My turn, draw. Hikaru drew, glanced at the card, saw it wasn't immediately needed, and flipped his set card. I activate my facedown. A facedown? All right, Jaden did set one for him. But why not last turn? What could it be now? The crowd was puzzled. Trap card, Fusion Reserve. Fusion Reserve? The brothers were startled. A trap that helps with fusion? Your partner really trusts you. Q nodded toward Hikaru. Of course. Fusion Reserve lets me reveal a fusion monster from my extra deck and add one of its listed materials from my deck to my hand, then add one copy of Polymerization from my graveyard to my hand. I reveal Evil Hero Malicious Fiend from my extra deck. Evil Hero? Lulu covered her mouth in surprise. This archetype didn't exist in her world. Both were a hero, what was the difference? Evil Hero, huh? So today Hikaru's fusions were heroes too? Just not elemental heroes. The onlookers, familiar with Hikaru's tendencies, weren't shocked. Any fusion was par for the course with him. Thanks to Fusion Reserve, I add Evil Hero Malicious Edge from my deck, then return Polymerization from my graveyard to my hand. His dual disc ejected a card, hovered it for display, then dropped it into his hand. Simultaneously, Jaden's polymerization left the graveyard and joined him. Next, I activate Vision Hero Ferris from my hand. By discarding one other hero monster, I can special summon it. I discard Evil Hero Malicious Edge to special summon Ferris. Vision Hero. That camera-themed series looked like today was a real hero festival. A wave of excited chatter swept through the crowd. As one of the most accessible archetypes in the world, hero cards were famous and everywhere, yet that fame only applied to the common ones. Fusions like Evil Hero, Vision Hero, Masked Hero, or the Neos fusions Jaden wielded were almost never seen. A camera locked onto Hikaru's field. Inside the labyrinth, a pink Vision Hero silhouette shimmered into view. It flickered, then solidified. When Ferris is normal or special summoned, I can place one Vision Hero from my deck face up in my spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. After this effect resolves, I can only special summon hero monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. I place Vision Hero Increase in my spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. Treated as a continuous trap. Ha, just like Labyrinth Wall Shadow. The Paradox brothers burst out laughing at the parallel. Another camera shifted, projecting a blue image onto his field. During either player's main phase, I contribute one hero on the field to special summon Increase from my spell and trap zone. Hikaru waved his hand. The pink silhouette vanished, replaced by a blue armored hero. Vision Hero Increase. When Increase is special summoned from the spell and trap zone, I can special summon one level 4 or lower Vision Hero from my deck. Special summon Vision Hero Vion. A deep violet mechanical hero appeared beside the blue warrior, as if it had always stood there. Whoa, whoa, whoa! So cool, this is Vision Hero? Jaden cheered. Though his voice didn't reach Hikaru, the latter could picture Jaden's starstruck grin perfectly. Hikaru's lips curved. When Vion is summoned, I send one hero from my deck to the GY. I send elemental hero Shadow Mist. He could almost hear Jaden yelling, "How do you have Shadow Mist too?" But these cards weren't alchemized. The Vision Heroes had simply gifted them earlier, and he hadn't had a chance to use them until now. I remember Shadow Mist's effect. Right. When it's sent to the GY, I add a hero monster with a different name from my deck. I'll add Evil Hero Adusted Gold. Then I activate Adusted Gold's effect. By discarding it, I add Dark Calling from my deck to my hand. Hikaru sent the corrupted golden hero to the GY to retrieve Dark Calling. Now I'll use Vion's other effect. Once per turn, by banishing one hero from my GY. I add one polymerization spell from my deck to my hand. I banish Shadow Mist to add Fusion Substitute. Though called Fusion Substitute, it was still treated as polymerization by game rules, so Vion could search it. Searching a fusion spell, exactly the kind of monster Hikaru would run. Looks like all that talk about their spirits fusing through dueling wasn't just hot air. Spectators and Princeton Group partners alike nodded as Hikaru secured his fusion card. All set, activate the spell card, Fusion Substitute. Hikaru lifted the two Vision Heroes from his field. This card can fuse monsters on the field. Hero hidden within light and illusion, step upon the stage and carve us a new path. Countless spotlights converged. Arms folded, coat billowing, a warrior appeared in a blaze of light. Vision Hero Adoration Level 8, Dark, Warrior, ATK 2800. A Vision Hero fusion, I saw that in the GX tournament. Oh right, the guy who dueled Hikaru. Vision Heroes really are something else. Another new hero. Lulu leaned forward, curious. A very important friend of hers used a vision deck, close cousin to these cards. Adoration's effect: once per turn, I target one other hero I control and one monster you control. Your monster loses ATK in def equal to my hero's ATK. Hikaru pointed to Acid on his field, then to Gate Guardian combined. Light focused on the two monsters. A huge acid mirage flared over Gate Guardian combined. Dropping its ATK by 2600 in a flash, now it's completely safe. Cutting a monster down to 1150 ATK instantly? That's brutal. And now, Hikaru's supporters erupted. Chaz's second eldest brother flashed a sly grin. Ha, naive. The Paradox brothers shouted in perfect sync, unable to hear each other yet mirroring every word. Too naive. Gate Guardian combines effect. Up to 3 times per turn, when the opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card I control, I can negate and destroy it. What? Chaz gasped. That effect could even bypass his armed dragons. 3 negates. Serena zeroed in on the number. 3 targeted effect negates, and it protects the whole field, basically a built-in safe zone. So troublesome. 3750 ATK and 3 layers of protection? All 3 heads of Gate Guardian combined inhaled. The phantom aura around them shattered. A quick spin, then a glare as it spat lightning, shattering Adoration's vision effect in an instant, yet its water and wind components still kept it safe. How's that? This is our invincible shield, the Gate Guardian that bars anyone who dares cross the labyrinth. The Paradox brothers struck their poses again. Had ha. Ha ha. Hikaru and Jaden burst out laughing at the same time. Seeing that, the Paradox brothers' high spirits wilted. The onlookers realized that even this must have been part of the pair's plan. A true hero steps forward without end to protect others, and so does Fusion. I activate the effect of Evil Hero Vicious Claws in my graveyard. What? What card is that? When did it hit the graveyard? Last turn, when Jaden sent it. What? That isn't even your card, how do you know what it does? A tag duel is teamwork, a cooperative fusion. Of course I checked the graveyard. Hikaru declared, waving an arm. Once per duel, if a monster I control is destroyed by battle or effect, I can special summon this card. A dashing fiend emblazoned on the equip spell Vicious Claw flashed a confident grin as it leapt into play. Evil Hero Vicious Claws Dark, Fiend, ATK 2500. It can come back from the graveyard just because something was destroyed? May was stunned. Then why didn't it show up when you destroyed Brave Neos? Q blurted. Hikaru snapped his fingers. He'd never seen this monster before arriving in this world, but he knew the spell Vicious Claw well. So when he spotted Jaden milling it, he was startled yet not panicked. Maybe it had been one of the Supreme King's quirky tools in the original story, he couldn't recall every card. But its effect happened to be perfect for this moment. Simple, Jaden didn't want to waste it back then. Vicious Claws triggers when my monster is destroyed. After it special summons itself from the graveyard, if I have a monster in the GY that lists Dark Fusion in its text, I can destroy one card on the field. Jaden's hand in graveyard didn't have that card at the time. But the Evil Hero Adusted Gold I added with Shadow Mist is exactly that monster. Crap, Q yelped. What's the fuss? They've got the invincible Gate Guardian, a clueless spectator asked. Heh, the answer's simple. Gate Guardian combined can't chain to this effect, Chaz explained from his seat, shaking his head. First, Vicious Claw's destruction effect doesn't target. More importantly, the destruction is a bonus condition tacked onto the special summon from the graveyard, so Gate Guardian combined can't respond. Really? Chaz's second brother paled. Exactly, I use Vicious Claw's effect to destroy your Gate Guardian combined. With a confident flick of its claws, the demon sprang forward, slashing the Guardian and sending it crumbling apart. Vicious Claws single-handedly felled Gate Guardian combined. Amazing. Incredible. The Paradox brothers spoke in turn, though were cut off from communicating. Your two minds still move as one. As duelists, you're top class. But, never underestimate the keepers of the maze. They roared together. Effective Gate Guardian combined. When this face-up special summon monster leaves the field because of the opponent, I can special summon one Gate Guardian monster of level 11 or lower from my deck or extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. It has another effect? And it's just like absolute zeros. May surveyed the field, calculating quickly. Gate Guardian combined still had 3 component forms available: Suijin, Kazajin, and Sangha of the Thunder. Senga could negate spell/trap effects twice per turn but only had 2450 ATK, both Acid and Vicious Claws could crush it in battle. Kazejin could search a spell/trap that listed all 3 guardians during its owner's main phase, but offered no protection. So, I special summon Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder from the extra deck. The wind component burst away from the guardian's body, clashed with Vicious Claws, and exploded. What remained was a smaller Gate Guardian. Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder level 9, Water, Aqua, ATK 2550. Tough customer, Jaden muttered. If it could split like that, another body would probably appear once this one was gone. But a thrilled grin spread across his face. Now that they knew, they could handle it. At that moment, the Paradox brothers felt their old fighting spirit ignite. Their opponents matched them in perfect sync, a rare and worthy foe. The fire of a true duelist blazed within them. Bring it on, Hikaru, show us what else your duel has. Hikaru still held plenty of cards. Everything so far had merely paved the way to topple the combined Guardian. The real assault was about to begin. Chapter 524, The Wall That Never Falls. Seeing a brand new monster on the opponent's field, Hikaru showed no change in emotion. He knew that Gate Guardian combined could disintegrate and how disgusting this monster was as a wall, so he wasn't upset about not completely dealing with it. Instead, he continued his operations. I activate the effective fusion substitute in my graveyard, banish it to return 1 fusion monster from my GY to my extra deck, then draw 1 card. I return Adoration to my extra deck. Hikaru placed Adoration back into his extra deck, then drew a card. At first glance he'd simply drawn a card, but the more attentive spectators clearly understood Hikaru's real goal, to retrieve Adoration. And Hikaru still hadn't used the recovered polymerization. Hikaru glanced at his hand. Oh, first, I normal summon Elemental Hero Prisma, and activate its effect. I reveal Evil Hero Inferno Wing from my extra deck and send Elemental Hero Burstinatrix from my deck to the graveyard. Then I activate the spell card, Polymerization. The fusion condition is 2 hero monsters. His normal summon hadn't been used yet, so Hikaru figured it would be wasteful not to make use of it, and activated this effect first. Immediately after, Hikaru took a card from his hand and revealed it. I fusion summon using Elemental Hero Prisma on my field and Vision Hero Vion from my hand. All the lights once again shone on Hikaru's position, and the hero that had previously dissipated reappeared on his field. It was as if the one shattered by Gate Guardian before hadn't been it at all. It merely stood calmly with its arms crossed, utterly serene. Vision Hero Adoration Level 8, Dark, Warrior, ATK 2800. A Vision Hero never shows its true face, each appearance is merely an image. Because it's a newly fusion summoned Adoration, its effect can be activated again. I activate Adoration's effect, targeting Masked Hero Acid on my field and Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder on your field. Beautiful. If this goes through, Jaden and the others will basically win. Atticus, who had finally recovered his composure, moved to the seats behind Serena, Chaz, and the others, cheering for the two. Naive. The Paradox brothers chuckled. Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder's effect. During either player's turn, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, that monster's ATK becomes 0 until the end of the turn. Q held up 2 fingers, making a V sign. This effect can be used up to twice per turn. What? It can even protect itself? That's too powerful. Gasps of astonishment rose and fell through the audience. Even Chaz had to admit it. Gate Guardian's protective ability was indeed terrifyingly strong. Masked Hero Acid ATK, 2600-0. Because Acid's ATK became 0, Adoration can only reduce our monster's ATK by 0. The Paradox brothers said almost simultaneously. Hikaru nodded, silently counting the remaining attack opportunities, and played his last fusion card. Spell card, Dark Calling. This card lets you banish materials from your hand or GY that are required for a fusion monster that can only be fusion summoned by Dark Fusion, and fusion summon that monster. I banish Evil Hero Malicious Edge from my GY and Evil Hero Adusted Gold from my hand. Dark Fusion Level 8, Evil Hero Malicious Fiend. The cool demonic hero with claws on its hands, bearing a ferocious grin, slowly spread its wings. Evil Hero Malicious Fiend Level 8, Fire, Fiend, ATK 3500. With this, Hikaru's field once again amassed a total ATK of over 8,000. But at this moment, Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder's effect activates. In the sky, the gigantic guardian once again exhaled a cold wind, targeting the demon on the field. Malicious Fiend's ATK is reduced to 0. Seeing this, Hikaru wasn't too nervous and commanded his monsters to attack. Enter battle phase. Wait, at this moment, the effective Labyrinth Wall Shadow activates. At the start of your opponent's battle phase, target one monster on your opponent's field with less than 1600 ATK, that monster is destroyed. The one I'll destroy is your Evil Hero Malicious Fiend. Get lost in the labyrinth. Even the walls have effects? The onlookers had lost count of how many times they'd exclaimed. The Paradox Brothers' monster protection ability was simply too strong. That's amazing. Serena couldn't help but worry. What should we do now? Chaz couldn't help but scratch his arm, pulling up his suit sleeve, looking very nervous. The Paradox Brothers couldn't help but chuckle. As long as this move destroyed Hikaru's attacker, even if Adoration defeated Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder, they could special summon Suijin with its leaving the field effect. At that point, no matter which monster Hikaru attacked with, Suijin could activate its effect to reduce the attacking monster's ATK to 0. By their next turn, using Labyrinth Wall Shadow's effect, they could place Kazejin as a continuous spell on their field, then form Gate Guardian of Wind and Water, gaining the ability to negate spell and trap effects on the field twice per turn. At that point, using their other tactics, they could easily chip away at the remaining 7 or 8,000 life points. I've been waiting for this move for a long time. Unexpectedly, Hikaru's tone suddenly shifted. What? The Paradox Brothers were simultaneously startled. What? Hikaru still has moves? Chaz's second brother couldn't help but crane his neck forward. Hikaru actually still has a strategy? More people began to discuss. The moment you targeted Malicious Fiend, I chained to your effect activation with the quick play spell, Form Change. Form Change? The Paradox Brothers repeated, confused. Oh. It's Form Change. Is it coming? Hikaru. Seeing Hikaru play this card, Jaden immediately understood what he intended. That's right, quick play spell, Form Change. Return one hero fusion monster you control to the extra deck, then special summon one masked hero with the same original level but a different name from your extra deck. Masked hero. Masked hero. That's right. Hikaru raised his hand and pointed skyward. The masked hero I possess. Let the light descend. Transform, Masked Hero Koga. Fully armored, the silver-angled hero held a sharp blade in each hand, instantly transforming from a demon to a warrior, as if the person inside had always been the same. Masked Hero Koga Level 8, Light, Warrior, ATK 2500. Koga's ATK increases by 500 for each monster on your field. Masked Hero Koga ATK, 2500-3000. With this, everything falls into place. Hikaru pointed at Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder. Attack with Adoration. Adoration waved its sleeve, and countless lights shone on Gate Guardian, then ignited it like flames. Bang! The monster was completely shattered. The Paradox Brothers lightly shielded themselves from the impact. Paradox Brothers LP, 8000-7750. When the special summoned face-up Gate Guardian of Water and Thunder leaves the field because of the opponent, its effect activates. Special summon one Suijin or Sangha of the Thunder from your banished zone. Although their original plan was to special summon Suijin for an invincible combo next turn, given the current situation, the Paradox Brothers naturally had to change strategy. Special summon, Sangha of the Thunder. Sangha of the Thunder Level 7, Light, Thunder, ATK 2600. Gate Guardian disintegrated again. The water component voluntarily separated from the thunder, sacrificing itself for the other's survival. There was a loud explosion. I knew it. That dual-fused Gate Guardian can split even further. This is too troublesome. Many of the watching duelists showed extremely distressed expressions. Hikaru had performed multiple consecutive fusions, yet the Paradox brothers were still able to endure. One should know that Sangha of the Thunder also possessed the classic ability to reduce an attacking monster's ATK to 0. I activate Koga's effect. Once per turn, by banishing one hero monster from my GY, I can target one face-up monster on the field. That monster's ATK decreases by the ATK of the banished monster until the end of the turn. Hikaru suddenly paused and silently picked up a normal monster from his graveyard. Jaden was stunned. I banish elemental hero Neos to reduce your Sangha of the Thunder's ATK by 2500. Sangha of the Thunder ATK, 2600-100. Attack with Malicious Fiend. Hikaru waved his hand, commanding the demon to attack. Fortunately, it was Sangha that was special summoned. Otherwise, if Suijin's ATK were reduced to 0, it wouldn't even be destroyed. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, if monsters with the same ATK clash, they are both destroyed, unless they have battle immunity. However, there was one exception. Even if monsters with 0 ATK attacked each other, neither would be destroyed by battle. After all, the ATK was 0. Sangha of the Thunder's effect. Once while this card is face-up on the field, during damage calculation when this card is attacked, target the attacking monster. That monster's ATK becomes 0. Sangha, which looked very much like a mechanical crab, began to crackle with electricity. The handsome clawed demon, just as it was about to strike, began convulsing violently as its ATK plummeted to 0. Evil Hero Malicious Fiend ATK, 3500-0. The opponent's ATK was 100, and Hikaru's was 0. Malicious Fiend was directly electrocuted to the ground, twitching in place, and finally exploded. Hikaru and Jaden LP, 7350-7250. Koga, attack. Koga flashed behind Sangha of the Thunder, then with a beautiful sword swing, cleaved the monster in two. Its body fell to the ground, shattering the labyrinth and costing the Paradox brothers a massive chunk of life points. Paradox Brothers LP, 7750-4850. Hikaru breathed a slight sigh of relief. Leaving any of the Gate Guardian components on the field was a huge headache. Now, they were finally all cleared. Hikaru and Jaden's close friends, who were watching, also relaxed slightly. This Gate Guardian was too persistent. The onlookers had more or less felt frustrated by it. Now, seeing Hikaru successfully deal with all the monsters, they also felt some relief. Hikaru glanced at the remaining cards in his hand and silently set 2. I set 2 cards and end my turn. Just like Jaden's last turn, Hikaru also set 2 cards. What an incredible combination! Truly amazing, the Paradox brothers said, one after another. Although you couldn't share information, the cards you left behind prepared your teammate, expanding your field while still retaining means of counterattack. As duelists, you are truly excellent. However, don't think that just because you dealt with Gate Guardian once, it's over. May drew a card, and seeing what he'd drawn, his lips curled up. After the last dormitory duel, we summarized many of our failures. Among them, Gate Guardian only having one set was the biggest problem. What? This time it wasn't just the duelists, the surrounding spectators heard and immediately grasped the implication. During the standby phase after your draw phase, the effect of Destiny Hero Dasher activates. If this card is in the GY, when I draw a monster during my draw phase, I can reveal it and special summon it. I special summon it in defense position and do not activate the draw effect. Destiny Hero Dasher Level 6, Dark, Warrior, Def 1000. Adding a defensive wall, huh? Ha ha. May looked at the monsters on Hikaru's field. Masked Hero Acid, Masked Hero Koga, Vision Hero Adoration, and Destiny Hero Dasher. Heroes, huh? Even the strongest heroes have their own inner confusion. When you are confused, you fall into a vortex and cannot extricate yourself. Falling into your own labyrinth, it's not that simple to get out, kid. I activate the normal spell, Dark Element. Ah. Jaden's expression changed when he saw this card. It's the one from last time. That's right. This is exactly the card we used when we lost that dormitory duel. However, after that, we also trained. May chuckled. As legendary duelists, to be complacent and fall into the labyrinth of wealth and fame, as gatekeepers and wanderers, is truly inappropriate. So after that, we also attempted countless changes. Now is the moment of that evolution. The effect of Dark Element. If there is a Gate Guardian monster in your graveyard, pay half your life points, special summon one level 11 or higher Gate Guardian monster from your hand, deck, or extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. What are they going to summon? You should know very well, Jaden. Jaden looked troubled. That's right. Special summon, Dark Guardian. Dark Guardian, like Fusion Substitute, was a card whose name was also treated as Gate Guardian by the game's rules. A guardian from hell riding a spider roared and stood in the labyrinth, like the Minotaur in an endless maze, blocking everyone from escaping. Dark Guardian Level 12, Dark Warrior, ATK 3800. Paradox Brothers LP, 4850-2425. Dark Guardian special summoned by Dark Element is unaffected by other monsters' effects, and also unaffected by spell cards and effects activated by your opponent. That monster evolved too. Jaden exclaimed. I remember it couldn't be destroyed by battle. That's right. May nodded. Not only that, I also activate the spell card, Ririoka Guardian. If your life points are less than your opponent's, target one monster on your field whose original name includes Gate Guardian, your opponent's life points are halved. After that, the targeted monster's ATK increases by the amount of your opponent's current life points. What? Halved? Atticus stood up in shock. And its ATK directly increases by the life point value? You might as well call it an instant kill. There's a card like that? Even the spectators who barely understood duels knew how terrifying this card was in terms of raw numbers. Hikaru and Jaden LP, 7250-3625. Dark Guardian ATK, 3800-7425. Chaz couldn't help but swallow hard, a drop of cold sweat trickling down his forehead. This might be a bit too strong, right? It's not over yet, May continued. The effect of Dark Element, banish it from the graveyard, and I can add one of my banished Senga of the Thunder, Kazajin, or Suijin to my hand. I add Suijin to my hand. Then, the effect of Labyrinth Wall Shadow, I place the banished Kazajin on the field as a continuous spell. The dual component Gate Guardians required banishing the components from the field to be special summoned from the extra deck, but I banish Suijin from my hand, Kazajin from the field, and Senga of the Thunder from the graveyard, descend once more. Our Gatekeeper. The two shouted in unison, Gate Guardians combined. The yellow Thunder Machine, the green Wind Demon, the blue Water Support, the three components flew into the sky and combined again. A brand new Guardian roared and appeared once more. Gate Guardians combined level 12, Dark Warrior, ATK 3750. A Gate Guardian that was so hard to deal with, and it's back just like that. Lulu couldn't help but gasp. Were legendary duelists really that powerful? Chaz's brother was stunned at first, but then he remembered these were their duelists, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. It seems this time, we win. What bad luck for them. Chaz's expression changed when he heard his brother's words. Although he usually wasn't good at arguing with his two older brothers, and had rarely dared to talk back growing up. But now, don't be so full of yourself, second brother. Chaz snorted coldly. Look at the screen. Hikaru and Jaden. They haven't given up. What's there to cling to? Hikaru's field has 3 monsters in attack position. Dark Guardian just has to attack one and it's over. That's right, seems like the GX tournament champion is nothing more than quiet. Suddenly, a roar sounded. No, although it felt like a roar in everyone's hearts, it was just a calm whisper. They looked at the hunched figure in the corner and couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Rex Raptor. A legendary duelist. He just stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the duel, not looking at any of them. But the sound he uttered was like a dinosaur's roar, making people tremble. Serena's eyes twinkled. She felt like she wanted to learn that. Lulu, on the other hand, kept watching the screen, eyes fixed, not daring to miss a single detail. Battle. Dark Guardian attacks, Koga. Open the set card. Hikaru suddenly raised his hand. Trap card, Fusion Duplication. The Paradox brothers looked at this uncommon card in confusion. On the card art, a figure was mass-producing copies of Polymerization. Target 1 Polymerization normal or quick play spell in your or your opponent's GY, banish that spell, and apply the effect of that spell as it was when activated. I banish the normal spell Polymerization from my graveyard. Polymerization at a time like this? As expected of Hikaru, even now, he still wants to fuse. But Dark Guardian is unaffected by monster effects, right? Even a fusion monster won't work, will it? Of course it will. Hikaru took a deep breath. Sorry, this is the first time I've used you since I got you. And right off the bat, it's a situation like this. But, at a necessary moment, I must use it. Hikaru narrowed his eyes and raised his right hand. The fusion condition is 3 monsters with different names from my field or hand. The 3 spears that judge the world turn into the prison of ice and freeze everything. As Hikaru spoke, he actually exhaled white cold air. Fusion Summon. Level 9. Trishula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment. Gra. A dragon's roar exploded. The 3-headed ice dragon slowly appeared. It seemed as if it had just awakened, or as if it was breathing fresh air after an eternity. After its initial confusion upon materializing, it quickly became irritable, excited, and frenzied. Its 3 heads thrashed everywhere, completely disregarding everything around it, wantonly crushing everything in sight. Destruction. Battle. No need to hesitate, no need to waver. Just summon me, and I will help you. I will help you freeze everything. Grahahaha. Trishula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment Water, Level 9, Dragon, Def 2000. What kind of monster is that? The Paradox brothers looked at this monster, which was indiscriminately crushing the labyrinth, somewhat bewildered. Forget it, never mind, the attack continues. Dark Guardian attacks Trishula. Trishula was savoring the air after its long confinement when it suddenly saw an overconfident fellow flying by. It roared, wanting to fight, but realized it was in defense position, and the opponent's ATK was over 7,000. With a roar of fury, it still couldn't withstand Dark Guardian, shattering into ice shards and disappearing from the field. It seems to be the spirit's own consciousness enjoying the show, Tiara casually explained to Hikaru after witnessing the scene. It should be the Trishula from the dual terminal spirit world. It seems to be the type of spirit that directly descends as a card, participates with its own consciousness, and starts a brawl whenever someone in any dimension summons it. A battle-crazed spirit, huh? Hikaru nodded gently. It was his first time truly fusion summoning it, so he hadn't known what Trishula was like before. But it was worth noting that although this was Hikaru's first time summoning Trishula, in reality, no matter which duel it was, Trishula always occupied one of Hikaru's extra deck slots, a truly 100% attendance rate fusion monster. Gate Guardian's combined attacks Dasher. BZZT, Dasher's figure dissipated. If Dasher was removed from the field by its own effect, it was banished directly. I set 1 card and end my turn. May looked at the set card and nodded gently. The card he'd set was the trap card, Mirror Force. A trap that could destroy all attacking monsters. Moreover, Gate Guardians combined on his field still had 3 instances of targeting negation, and Dark Guardian had over 7,000 ATK. No matter how Jaden wanted to attack, it wouldn't be easy to overcome their invincible combination. And even if Gate Guardians combined was destroyed, they could reassemble it just like before. Their advantage was enormous. Chapter 525. The exit was always there. It's my turn. Jaden drew a card and couldn't help but sigh as he looked at his hand. Since it was Jaden's turn, the audience quickly focused their attention, wanting to see what he would do. If someone had carefully observed all the spectators, they might have noticed that one particular person seemed especially excited at that moment. Although the duel so far had been thrilling and wonderfully varied, this particular audience member had shown no emotional reaction, only appearing excited when Jaden made a move or when Jaden's cards achieved some effect. Now, it was Jaden's turn again. Jaden looked at the cards in his hand, sighing slightly. Thinking about it now, it seems like only a year and a half has passed, but it feels as if a lifetime has gone by. Although the labyrinth prevented him from seeing Hikaru or hearing his voice, just looking at the card Hikaru had set face down made him feel like it was still the past, still like their first time in the warrior domain. He seemed to hear Hikaru's words, "Use my card," from when they fought side by side. Was confusion, after all, too much of a luxury for him? Jaden looked at the cards in his left hand. As stated earlier, he was super strong now. However, precisely because of that, he'd been holding back. He hadn't truly gone all out. He'd dueled the Paradox Brothers before and felt that the Paradox Brothers in his memory were too far below his current level, so he'd held back. But looking at it now, he'd been a little too confident. And a little too unfair to the duel itself. Everyone grows. Even old veterans won't always remain stagnant. Deep in the vortex and the labyrinth, only by moving forward can one find the answer. Fear? That shouldn't be what he should feel. Just like Hikaru, who forever believes in fusion. Jaden had reached this point by believing in heroes. So whether it was Elemental, Neospatian, Masked, or even Evil Hero, they were all part of the heroes. He shook his head. Before anything else, he would use every card in his hand. Activate when there are no monsters on your field, convert contact. Send one Neospatian from your hand and one from your deck to the graveyard, then draw 2 cards. Jaden revealed Neospatian Grand Mole in his hand and Neospatian Aqua Dolphin in his deck, sent them to the graveyard, then drew 2 cards. Then, I activate the spell card, Evil Assault. Oh my god, Hikaru couldn't help but mutter as he looked at the card. That exists too? Evil Assault's effect, discard 1 card from your hand to activate. Add 1 level 4 or lower evil hero monster from your deck to your hand, or special summon it. After this card is activated, until the end of the turn, you cannot special summon non-hero monsters from your extra deck. Another self-restriction for heroes? That's right, I discard Elemental Hero Solid Soldier from my hand. From my deck, I special summon Evil Hero Dead End Prison. A Prisma-like hero bound within a crystalline prison stepped onto the field. Evil Hero Dead End Prison Level 4, Light, Rock, ATK 1700. Dead End Prison's effect. Send 1 hero monster from your deck to the graveyard. This turn, if a hero fusion monster is fusion summoned, this face-up card can be used as one of the listed fusion materials. I send the second Shadow Mist to the graveyard, and this turn, Dead End Prison becomes a substitute fusion material. Oh. I know this one, it's a monster similar to the light Hex-Sealed Fusion. Below the stage, Serena nodded repeatedly, indicating she was well-versed in this. Additionally, the second Shadow Mist's effect, when sent to the GY, add 1 hero monster except Shadow Mist from my deck to my hand. I choose Sparkman. He took a normal monster. Spell card, Polymerization. He played a common spell card. This card is the origin of fusion, and the starting point of friendship. I fusion summon using Dead End Prison on the field and Sparkman in my hand. Come forth, one of my most beloved heroes. Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman. Below the stage, there was a crackling sound. A hero clad in silver-white armor appeared brilliantly in a flash of light. Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman Level 8, Light, Warrior, ATK 2500. So it's Shining Flare Wingman? The Paradox Brothers immediately recognized this card. This card can destroy an opponent's monster by battle and inflict damage equal to that monster's ATK, and it also gains 300 ATK for each elemental hero in the GY. Although you don't have too many elemental heroes in your graveyard, as long as it surpasses Gate Guardians combined, you can win directly with its effect, so, do you dare to attack? In the combined graveyards, there were a total of 10 elemental heroes, so Shining Flare Wingman's ATK would reach 5,500. As long as the attack went through, they'd win. Battle. Shining Flare Wingman attacks. Naive. Activate trap card, Mirror Force. Q laughed and flipped his facedown card. Oh wow! Shining Flare Wingman was instantly reflected by its own power and exploded. Ha ha, looks like we win. It's all over. Dark Guardian and Gate Guardians combined are too strong. Ah, did they lose after all? Looks like the GX champion is nothing special. The audience chattered. However, on the stage, Jaden couldn't help but smile. Ha 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 ha. What's wrong, young man? Winning and losing in a duel is normal, don't let it drive you crazy. Seeing Jaden smile, the Paradox brothers thought he couldn't accept the loss and began to console him. No, thank you, seniors. You're right, I really am in a labyrinth of my own. Jaden laughed. But I suddenly realized. The exit was hinted at from the very beginning, wasn't it? Jaden suddenly flipped open a facedown card. Just like his first tag duel with Hikaru, where he'd won using Hikaru's card after his ace was destroyed. Trusting teammates. Trusting partners. That was truly the act of a hero. There was nothing purer or simpler than that. Then, I'll use your card, Hikaru. Hikaru nodded silently. Fight to your heart's content. Activate trap card, favorite contact. What? That is, what? Although the Paradox brothers couldn't see each other, they were certain that at this moment, they were both utterly bewildered. Special summon one fusion monster from your extra deck that mentions a hero monster as material, ignoring its summoning conditions, by placing the fusion materials mentioned on it on the bottom of the deck in any order, from among cards in your hand, field, GY, and or your banished cards. On the card art, Neos and Shining Flare Wingman shown together. I will fuse Shining Flare Wingman and Neos. The two most beloved heroes fuse together. Ignite my path. Neos. Flame Wingman. Roar. Alright. The two monsters made contact in the air. Shining Flare Wingman's armor equipped itself onto Neos, their bodies merged, and finally a Neos wielding a long blade and spreading silver-white wings descended from the sky. Elemental Hero Shining Neos Wingman Level 8, Light, Warrior, ATK 3100. ATK 3100? The opponent's ATK is over 7,000. Ha ha ha. Jaden clenched his fist excitedly. Shining Neos Wingman inherits all of Shining Flare Wingman's effects and is further strengthened. Shining Flare Wingman, could it be? The Paradox brothers were greatly alarmed. That could it be? Jaden was so excited he spoke much faster. Shining Neos Wingman's ATK increases by 300 points for each monster in the graveyard. It only needed to be a monster? How many monsters were in their graveyards? Currently, in our graveyards, there are a total of 21 monster cards. The Paradox brothers' jaws dropped. T21? Elemental Hero Shining Neos Wingman ATK, 3100-9400. And 9000? This. Even Five-Headed Dragon can only stand behind it and sigh in awe. Now, as long as Shining Neos Wingman attacks Gate Guardians combined, they win. The audience discussed animatedly. Chaz's brother immediately looked as if someone had died. On the other side, Chaz wasn't particularly excited either, he just looked at this monster, feeling his blood boil, thinking that next time he absolutely had to settle the score with Jaden again. Jaden looked at his hand. Although directly attacking Gate Guardians combined would be fine, however. Last time, in my duel with you, I won by battling with Winged Kuriboa's fusion monster, defeating your Dark Guardian. Now, we've both grown stronger, and we've both moved forward, so I want to show you my determination to break free from the labyrinth. Quick play spell, Burial from a Different Dimension. Target up to 3 of your and your opponent's banished monsters. Those monsters return to their owners' graveyards. I choose Hikaru's Evil Hero Malicious Edge, Evil Hero Adusted Gold, and Destiny Hero Dasher. Because 3 more monsters were added to the graveyard, Shining Neos Wingman's ATK would increase further. Elemental Hero Shining Neos Wingman ATK, 9400-10300. Ha! Someone couldn't help but quickly snap a photo. Someone else dropped their phone in shock at seeing this number. The Paradox brothers just wanted to say, you don't need to show that much determination. Such ridiculous ATK. Lulu couldn't help but stare at the dual field. Even for a resident of the XYZ dimension, where the culture revolved around pursuing high ATK numbers, this value felt quite terrifying. Battle. Jaden pointed at Dark Guardian. Shining Neos Wingman attacks Dark Guardian. Neos spun the long blade in his hand. Being able to fuse with anything and wield any weapon, the moment he grasped the sword, it was as if he'd practiced swordsmanship for decades, dancing with the blade, cutting directly through the labyrinth from one end to the other. The gatekeeper guarding the exit of the labyrinth vanished in an explosion. Paradox Brothers LP, 2425-0. The labyrinth slowly began to collapse. Jaden finally saw Hikaru again. The two smiled at each other, not saying much. They extended a hand to each other, high-fived, and everything went unsaid. Chapter 526, Legend of Legends. The duel ended with Chaz winning decisively. If Hikaru had been at a disadvantage during the earlier duel, there would have been spectators mocking him or Chaz relatives pointing fingers. However, after the tag duel concluded, there was only effusive praise. Chaz's uncles, those completely unfamiliar family relatives, and the board members of the Princeton group rushed to Chaz's side as if scrambling to be reborn, one by one, continuously praising his growth and excellence. One said he was young and promising, another claimed he had always believed Chaz's future was limitless, and so on. This left Serena stunned. Wasn't it her master and Jaden who had won the duel? Why, after their duel ended, were there only some reporters and duelist spectators greeting them? In the stands, a seemingly frail student indignantly squeezed the armrest of his seat. After realizing he had crushed the armrest to pieces, he then looked deeply at Jaden. Jaden seemed to have a nerve touched, instinctively looking in that direction, but the moment he looked, there was no one there. Hikaru didn't mind not receiving much applause after the duel. Facing a large number of fans every day was what gave him a headache. Besides, he had already prepared himself before coming here today. In this place, there was only one protagonist, and that was Chaz. Chaz Princeton. Compared to those things, Hikaru still preferred to chat with the Paradox brothers. After all, putting everything else aside, the Gate Guardian Fusion Monster series was of genuinely excellent quality. The two brothers weren't too surprised by Hikaru's interest. They had long heard that Hikaru was a duelist who was enthusiastic about fusion, pursued fusion, and also liked to seek out every kind of fusion, so they didn't mind Hikaru attempting to obtain the Gate Guardian series of cards. After all, the two were wandering and traveling tag duel specialists who didn't concern themselves with such matters. However, what surprised Hikaru a little was that the concept of a Gate Guardian dimension did exist. It was the peculiar dimension that the Paradox brothers called the Grand Labyrinth dimension. But the key was that the coordinates of this dimension were not information they could simply hand over. Because this was a commercial dimension. It sounded strange at first, but Hikaru thought it over and slowly understood. Although nowadays Hikaru could freely move through most dimensions using a dimensional gate as long as he had the coordinates, there were still many specific exceptions. The first type, like the Warrior Domain or the Magician Domain, were special dimensions that could not be entered through normal means. Only those who were recognized were allowed entry. The second type were dimensions that theoretically anyone could enter but were blockaded by certain forces, such as the Sanctuary of Light, directly blockaded by Kaiba Corp. Naturally, Seto Kaiba was certainly not the only one in the world who would do such a thing. However, unlike Kaiba, those other dimensions that were specifically blockaded or had their information sealed served a different purpose. Money. For example, the Grand Labyrinth dimension, known to the Paradox Brothers because its internal structure was a labyrinth. If one could not find the exit within 24 hours of entering, they would be forcibly expelled back to the human world. Thus, it was a very suitable dimension for making money. The company that discovered this dimension immediately sealed off all information about it, holding the coordinates firmly in their hands, then offered everyone the opportunity to enter once for a certain ticket fee. As for whether there would be results or if one could obtain cards, that depended entirely on the duelist's own fortune. Humans are truly boring. Tiara, who had listened to everything from the side, couldn't help but snort. Hikaru chuckled awkwardly, while Jaden beside him laughed and said to Tiara, "Oh, well, they spent so many resources finding that dimension, they can't just give it away for free." There were many companies in this world that made money through dimensional travel, but not many had truly found suitable and reasonable ways to profit big. Previously, Hikaru had always lived at the academy, and when he occasionally left Academy Island, it was to study and work at Scenery Corp, so he had never encountered companies like these. The Princeton Group has partnerships with many such companies, the Paradox Brothers explained to Hikaru and Jaden. Like that Minotaur company, it's one of the most profitable among these emerging firms. Minotaur Company was an international company possessing the coordinates of the Grand Labyrinth, a relatively large dimension. Besides the Gate Guardian spirits, there seemed to be many others inside. And no matter how hard one tried, one could only stay for 24 hours at a time, so there was no worry about losing customers after a single ticket. The income was very stable. In addition to Minotaur Company, the Princeton Group also had several other partner companies, all involved in similar businesses. This was the Princeton Group's attempt to invest their ambition into the Duel Monsters world. After all, although the company had developed new dimensional travel equipment, their exploration, reconnaissance, and dueling capabilities were purely new ventures. If it weren't for Chaz's sudden rise and his becoming Kaiba's disciple, they might not have been able to partner with these companies at all. If that young man becomes the new helmsman of the Princeton Group, more companies will likely partner with them in the future, and then you'll be able to travel through some of these restricted dimensions, May said to Hikaru and Jaden. Q looked at Chaz, who was surrounded by elders and business partners, and added, "However, as a duelist, if your path is constrained by money, you won't be able to advance." This was wisdom born from their own experience. "I hope your friend won't be held back by the group's affairs." "Ha, you can rest assured, Chaz is super amazing," Jaden said with a laugh. Hikaru also felt that Chaz would never abandon dueling because of such matters. After all, the reason he was fighting to wrest leadership of the group from his brothers was precisely because he wanted to get closer to his master, Seto Kaiba. In any case, both sides were very satisfied with this duel. Although they'd lost to Jaden again, this time the Paradox Brothers had witnessed the opponent's growth, and their own performance was clearly more satisfying to them than last time. For such veteran duelists, whether a duel could satisfy the audience was no longer the primary concern, because they themselves were far more strict than any audience member. Last time, losing to Jaden had jolted them awake from the endless praise and money. This time, dueling Jaden wasn't just about proving themselves, it was about validating their own progress. When they said Jaden was trapped in a labyrinth, weren't they also searching for a way out? After Hikaru shook hands with the two legendary duelists, he walked toward the duelist spectator area. Serena excitedly waved her hands, cheering and celebrating for them, and Lulu couldn't help but gently applaud. Hikaru smiled and waved back to the two, while Jaden directly sat down in the front seat with a ha, and repeatedly said how interesting the duel had been. Scenery Corp also continuously applauded Hikaru. They naturally wouldn't try to curry favor with Chaz at such a time. Moreover, their company's duelist representative was Hikaru, Chaz Princeton's good friend, so why would they need to make an appearance at this moment? Earlier, when Hikaru was chatting with the Paradox Brothers, they hadn't disturbed him. Now that the duel was over, they immediately came to congratulate Hikaru on his performance, and then asked Jaden if he was interested in appearing in their upcoming Scenery Corp duel recordings. "Ah, that's it, right? Fierce Duel. Legendary Duelists 3. Serena reacted almost immediately, jumping up excitedly. 3. Lulu beside her caught on to a key detail. Serena nodded eagerly, explaining Hikaru's previous duel footage to Lulu and mentioning she could show it to her later at the Fusion Wing, as they were all very famous duels. Jaden naturally wouldn't refuse. This duel had been very enjoyable for him too, and if more people could see it, that would certainly be even better. As for the Paradox brothers, Scenery Corp had already discussed it with them, so after receiving Jaden's confirmation, they excitedly prepared to send the footage to the company's publicity department to start editing the new episode of Legendary Duelists. And at that moment, Hikaru. At some point, Rex Raptor had already appeared beside the group. Hikaru stood up and greeted him. Rex Senpai. Oh. Mr. Rex Raptor, it's really you. Jaden excitedly jumped up to greet him. On the other side, Serena explained to Lulu that this was also a legendary duelist, and her master Hikaru's senior. Rex Raptor slightly adjusted his hat, acknowledging Jaden's words, then looked at Hikaru. Kid, didn't you tell the people at the company earlier that you wanted to duel a legendary duelist? The Scenery Corp staff exchanged glances. Of course they had told Rex Raptor about this, but why was he specifically bringing it up now? Yes, Hikaru nodded, confirming he indeed had such a plan. Initially, in his duel with Rex Raptor, he had obtained a super unfinished version of the Claw of Hermos. As he dueled Weevil Underwood and Seto Kaiba from 10 years ago, the completion of the Claw of Hermos gradually increased. Today, after the duel with the Paradox brothers, although Hikaru hadn't checked his deck, he knew from experience that the completion of his Claw of Hermos must have improved further. This was a good thing. Just a few more legendary duelists, and maybe he'd complete it. This was his first legendary dragon, and also the second usable legendary dragon, which was quite exciting. Ha! Rex Raptor's eyes drifted to the side, seemingly piercing through space to see a certain place. A while ago, I, through connections, got back in touch with an old friend. A friend, I guess. His emotions were a little downcast as he said this. Anyway, I asked that person to help me make contact and find an opportunity. He rummaged through his pocket, pulled out a card, and tossed it to Hikaru. Hikaru quickly caught it and looked down. On the card was an old man with oddly shaped hair, holding out both hands, making a peace sign. Hikaru slowly widened his eyes. Wow! Jaden saw the stick figure self-portrait on the card and couldn't help but let out a long gasp of admiration. What? What? Now Serena didn't know what was happening, jumping up and down, trying to see what Hikaru held in his hand, full of curiosity. This is Mr. Solomon Muto's? Hikaru asked tentatively. Muto? That's right. Rex Raptor took a deep breath. That guy, Yugi's grandpa. Oh my god. Hikaru was overjoyed. This seemed to be a pass, a friendship certificate to Domino City, to visit the legendary of legends, the genuine living legend, king of games Yugi Muto's own grandfather, Solomon Muto. Could it be that you asked Joey? Hikaru made the connection and suddenly realized. Rex Raptor did not deny it. King of Games Yugi Muto's sworn brother, Joey Wheeler, was one of the most excellent duelists of his era, second only to the true legend Seto Kaiba, who was still active on the front lines, and also someone Rex Raptor had once hated to the bone. To be honest, Rex Raptor had had a very good relationship with Joey for a period of time. Although his Red Ice Black Dragon had been lost to Joey, he didn't hold a grudge at the time and had even once warned Joey to be careful of psychic duelists and their abilities. Back then, they weren't enemies, they could even chat and laugh together. But later, Rex Raptor had listened to his good buddy Weevil Underwood, joined the Orichalcos faction, and dueled Joey Wheeler. After that, things became very strained between them. From then on, Rex Raptor went through many hardships, eventually became the spokesperson for Scenery Corp, and had come this far. Yet there were still many things he regretted but dared not face. One was Weevil Underwood, and the other was Joey Wheeler. The former was regret born from a misguided friendship, while the latter was regret born from his own betrayal. Some time ago, hearing that Hikaru actually wanted to challenge legendary duelists, Rex Raptor pondered for a long time, and finally, without Scenery Corp's knowledge, contacted Joey again. He had expected the other party might curse him out, might hang up directly. But he never expected that Joey didn't hold a grudge at all. He was even quite excited after hearing Rex's voice, asking where he'd been all these years and why he hadn't been around. When he learned what Rex wanted to do, he didn't suspect for a second whether Rex was trying to kidnap Solomon Muto. He chose to help without hesitation. Sigh. Rex sighed in his heart. Kid, this is a hard-won opportunity. He looked at Hikaru, his gaze like a scanner, as if wanting to engrave every detail. Old Man Muto has many addresses and contact methods for legends. If you really want to challenge them, this is the fastest way. And also, don't startle the old man. Hikaru heard the extremely unnatural shift in Rex Raptor's emotions. He looked at the card in his hand, then looked up at Rex Raptor again, took 2 deep breaths, and patted his chest. Don't worry, Rex Senpai. Chapter 527, Full-Time, Part 1. Compared to Jaden, Chaz's deck had no significant differences from when he'd participated in the GX tournament. Although he was facing 2 opponents, Chaz won beautifully. It had to be said that with the Ojama system, he wasn't as afraid of a resource battle as one might think. Even fighting 2 people, with superior physical strength, skill, and draw power, he basically couldn't lose to his 2 older brothers. After winning, Chaz's 2 older brothers knelt on the ground. The eldest sighed, so my lagging little brother has finally reached this day? The second brother couldn't help but mutter, damn it, am I really the last one starting today? In the original story, Chaz and his 3 brothers actually had a dynamic similar to the Ojama brothers. Although not perfectly aligned, it was when Chaz first dueled his eldest brother that he acquired the Ojama brothers. Although his 2 older brothers usually looked down on him and often called him a straggler, they were still his biological brothers. Especially after personally participating in the interdimensional journey and witnessing the dangers faced by true duelists in other dimensions, they no longer felt that Chaz was merely using the family name to gain fame without any real return, as they had in the past. Therefore, after losing to Chaz, they were fairly accepting. After all, his victory didn't mean their status was truly gone. In the past, the eldest brother represented the business world, the second brother represented the political world, and Chaz represented the Duel Monsters world. The 3 developed in different directions, and Chaz had to serve the eldest brother's goals. That was why he'd often participated in commercial tournaments when he was young. But from now on, the focus of the Princeton group would completely shift to the Duel Monsters world that Chaz represented, and all of the group's resources would be directed toward this area. Because the new strategic direction was confirmed and Chaz had won, the next step was naturally a banquet. After all, Chaz couldn't just win the duel and then completely wash his hands of everything. At least for today, he still had to get acquainted with the important members of the group and various partners. Naturally, Hikaru and the others were free to roam around the luxurious high society banquet. However, none of them were interested in such things, so they just searched for food they liked. To Jaden's excitement, Chaz had specifically instructed the chef to make extra tempura and serve it to Jaden whenever he wanted. Therefore, Jaden could enjoy fried shrimp to his heart's content. Hikaru wandered around the banquet, and whenever he found something new, Tiara would have him try it. She was usually very bored, so having this kind of tasting assignment, she immediately tried everything with great enthusiasm. Although the group was just eating and drinking, and Serena and Lulu even started feeding each other, no one bothered them. On one hand, there were generally few people here who would look down on commoners or pester others who were simply focused on eating. On the other hand, Hikaru was quite famous. Most people here, upon seeing him, would mention GX champion. Furthermore, even Jaden and Atticus were duelists who had participated in duels that these people had seen, so they wouldn't be easily forgotten. Therefore, everyone felt very good about this banquet. The only one who felt a little uncomfortable was Jaden. He kept sensing that someone was secretly watching him while he ate his fried shrimp. He thought it was a fan, or someone trying to snatch his tempura, but every time he looked up, the gaze had vanished. Very strange. However, he didn't dwell on it for long. He was in a very good mood today. During the time Hikaru was in the Synchro Dimension, Jaden had dueled his other self, the Supreme King, almost every day. Although he only dueled once a day, he had gradually become familiar with the other party. Of course, saying that might not be entirely appropriate. After their interactions, he felt that the other party and himself might never have been two separate people. But that wasn't important. What mattered was that they could talk. Although he had previously shown no interest in the Supreme King's words and was furious with him, strongly unwilling to acknowledge him. But after losing so many duels, he had to seriously consider and reflect. After all, his side had lost, and stubbornly holding on was a bit embarrassing. So during their duels, he thought about and discussed the differences between his ideas and the Supreme King's, between his deck and the Supreme King's. First and foremost, undoubtedly, was Super Polymerization. Quick play spell, Super Polymerization. Discard one card from your hand to activate. Fusion summon one fusion monster using monsters from either field as material. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. Furthermore, this card could even ignore some fusion restrictions, allowing monsters that must be fusion summoned with a specific fusion card to be successfully fusion summoned. Undoubtedly, this card was the biggest difference between him and the Supreme King. Whenever Jaden thought he could turn the tide, the Supreme King's Super Polymerization would make him grimace. Both were hero decks, both used fusion strategies, but the Supreme King could directly fusion summon Jaden's heroes into other monsters. Compared to Jaden painstakingly trying to deal with the opponent's monsters, this single card could accomplish everything. The key was that heroes could be fusion summoned with any attribute to create a corresponding attribute monster, which truly caused Jaden enormous trouble. But as their relationship gradually became less hostile, he managed to ask the Supreme King before one duel not to use Super Polymerization and to duel fairly using only heroes. However, he didn't expect. He still lost. It's a simple matter. We used the same deck, the same tactics, the same ideas. In fact, you and I have no fundamental difference, no so-called gap. But not pure enough. Not as pure as him. Whether it was relying on instinct, relying on wisdom, acting like a hero, or wanting to be a passionate person, no matter what. Dueling is a pure thing. To go further on the path of dueling, you must have persistence, and be resolute. Just like your good friend, that pure fusion of Hikaru's. Don't delve into your heart anymore. It's better for you this way. Finally, the Supreme King said. Then, that day, Jaden was thrown out of his spiritual world. After that, when he tried to use the mirror Hikaru had given him, he couldn't reflect the Supreme King at all. Perhaps he was already tired of it. Or, he had already said everything he needed to say. After all, in their last duel, the duel without Super Polymerization, the Supreme King had uncharacteristically spoken so many words. Jaden had also thought for many days afterward. Through his duels with the Supreme King, he had obtained many incredibly powerful hero cards that weren't available on the market. But those cards were actually secondary. He had been somewhat unsure in what aspect he wasn't pure enough, until today, when he dueled alongside Hikaru and recalled that duel in the warrior domain. That was when he remembered. Without realizing it, he had actually started feeling that dueling wasn't as interesting anymore. But the reason he dueled with others in the first place was precisely because he found it interesting. Therefore, he was very happy today and wasn't paying as much attention. Although someone was secretly observing him, he didn't care that much. On the other side, Tiara took a bite of pastry. The person standing next to Hikaru watched in horror as the pastry slowly disappeared into thin air, then couldn't help but rub his eyes. Hikaru coughed twice and explained. The person then suddenly understood. So it was a spirit? Tiara wasn't bothered by this human's bewilderment. She wasn't interested in passing humans and didn't get angry. Her attention was entirely focused on the food. After each bite, she would evaluate it, and if she found something very interesting, she would save it for future idle experiments. Despite it being a banquet hosted by the Princeton Group, Tiara's evaluations were very sharp. Most of the food was merely edible to her, and only a very small portion received her positive affirmation, with a comment like barely comparable to the instant noodles Funlocorp makes. But compared to the original instant fusion created by magical scientist, that was impossible. It seemed that Funlocorp's imitation of instant fusion was indeed impressive. At the main entrance of the banquet hall, a person slowly left. He was a man in his mid-20s, dressed in a suit and leather shoes, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, looking like a successful young professional. But his interior had already been replaced by another being. Yubel. The strongest spirit in this world, in this era. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Jaden, my Jaden. That otherworldly god is too close, too close. Although Tiara wasn't fully concentrating, she was always by Hikaru's side, which gave Yubel no chance to approach Jaden and the others. Even though she had tried her best to conceal her presence with her power, if she dared to get even a little closer, she would definitely be discovered. She hadn't fully revived, and that otherworldly god was almost a living being. With just her spirit power, she was probably no match for the current Tiara. Earlier, she had watched the entire duel between Jaden and Hikaru. After more than a decade, she had finally seen Jaden again. She wanted to torment and eliminate the people next to Jaden to prove her love, but instead, she watched Jaden and Hikaru perfectly cooperate to win. There was even something called Beloved Contact, and Shining Flare Wingman and Neos Fusion summoning some kind of Shining Neos Wingman? Bastards! 2 bastards! No, 3, even more? She was so furious at that moment that she couldn't even articulate how many spirits were contained within that fusion-summoned monster. But it didn't matter. Yubel gnashed her teeth. She had only taken a few distant glances, and she didn't dare get closer. She took a deep breath. As the strongest spirit, the wisest strategist, and the most skilled general, Yubel was cold, ruthless, and intelligent. She knew she absolutely could not act impulsively right now. If that otherworldly god hadn't been distracted, she wouldn't even have been able to watch Jaden from here, because she was certain that Tiara still remembered her. After all, they had met before at the Nexus. She took several deep breaths. She needed to accelerate her revival process. After emerging from the Nexus, she had absorbed Silva, warlord of Dark World's life force, and carefully concealed herself, hiding within the body of a Dual Academy teacher. Using her abilities, she obtained a contract from that human, compelling them to provide dual energy for her revival. Although it was summer vacation, she had recovered a good deal thanks to the interdimensional development project. But it wasn't enough. Far from enough. Her soul seemed to be tearing and rolling in place, cursing, wailing, screaming, and yet also ecstatic. Finally seeing Jaden. That Hikaru was Jaden's best friend now? Good. She absolutely had to let him know that Jaden belonged only to her. She meticulously planned her strategy. Before long, a series of schemes came to mind. After summer vacation, all branch campuses of Dual Academy worldwide would send representatives to the main academy for exchange and study. By then, she definitely wouldn't disappoint Jaden. She would surely surprise him. Make him feel her love. Chapter 528, Full-Time, Part 2. Hikaru held a cup of unknown fruit juice, leisurely chatting with the Paradox brothers. The two were hired duelists, and among those who could actually contact them was none other than Vice-Chancellor Growler. Yes. Although it hadn't been mentioned, Growler actually had a good relationship with the two brothers. It was precisely because of this that he had been able to call upon them to duel Jaden and Cyrus in the Dual Academy dormitory duel. After all, these two were legendary duelists, and they weren't duelists like Weevil Underwood and Rex Raptor, who had disappeared from public view for a period of time. They were very famous tag duel specialists. Therefore, not just anyone could commission them. During the duel, they were hired professionals. After the duel, the two still had a good impression of Hikaru, Growler's disciple. "Have you heard of Fusion Birth?" May suddenly asked Hikaru. "Huh?" Hikaru was startled, then recalled. Ah, that one. It's a spell card that sends 5 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard, and if any of those 5 cards are fusion materials that can perform a fusion summon, you can fusion summon using them. Hikaru remembered that it was one of Jaiden's cards in the manga. Q nodded. That's right. Speaking of which, it's partly your own fault. Me? Hikaru asked, puzzled. The Paradox brothers laughed heartily. Because Hikaru's rise to fame had been so rapid, and his slogan was so straightforward, plus the fact that he had even used Dark Magician before, some cards associated with Hikaru saw their prices skyrocket. Especially Future Fusion, which had performed exceptionally well, even ridiculously so, in the GX tournament, was hyped to the heavens. Regardless of whether it was Hikaru or Zane, their performance using that card had been too astonishing. Everyone wasn't stupid. They naturally recognized the value of Future Fusion. Vice-Chancellor Growler had previously wanted to help Hikaru acquire a second Future Fusion, but because of the price surge, that plan was stillborn, with no further mention. At the same time, other fusion cards, especially those extremely famous and powerful ones, were naturally snatched up everywhere. The card Fusion Birth, because its cost of sending the top 5 cards of one's deck to the graveyard was too severe, and the results were not as stable as Future Fusion, hadn't been hyped to an outrageous price. But because there was demand and no supply, it wasn't available on the market either. Oh my god, there was such a thing? Of course, more importantly, the production of these cards was low. So Hikaru had never heard of it before. The Paradox brothers had only paid attention to this card's existence because by sending the Gate Guardian pieces to the graveyard, they could directly banish them to fusion summon Gate Guardian. It is said that after Mr. Pegasus finished traveling in a certain dimension, he obtained another copy. But ordinary people probably wouldn't know about this. Don't you have a variant art card that Mr. Pegasus gave you? This is a pretty good opportunity. That's right. As a fusion duelist who pursues the ultimate fusion, you must want this kind of card, right? Thank you very much, seniors. Hikaru nearly bowed to the two of them. He did have contact information for members of Industrial Illusions, 2 of them, but if the Paradox brothers hadn't told him, he probably would never have known about this and wouldn't have thought to reach out at all. Is there anything you two need help with? Ha 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 ha. No need for that. We're also very happy to have such an excellent junior like you. However, since you put it that way, we do have one idea. Hikaru's eyes lit up. Please tell me. We once guarded the gates of the labyrinth for Mr. Pegasus. But that's not the point. The two looked at each other and chuckled. The point is. They said in unison, Mr. Pegasus is also a legendary duelist. Moreover, he was like them, duelists who had dueled Yugi and Joey and thus became legends riding on the King of Games' coattails. The father of duel monsters, Maximilian Pegasus, was the legend himself. Hikaru's pupils contracted slightly, then he understood. So that was it. I understand. I will find a way to challenge Mr. Pegasus. The two brothers immediately burst into laughter. An interesting duel, and one related to their old boss, was much more exciting to them than money. Thus, another item was added to Hikaru's summer vacation itinerary. The good news was that the Paradox brothers were indeed the kind of duelists who could be reasoned with, so Hikaru didn't need to worry about how to get through the gates of Industrial Illusions. He just needed to contact the brothers when the time came. It seems you have a lot to do this summer, Tiara said casually after Hikaru finished talking with the Paradox brothers and sat down, pulling out his phone to record things in his memo. Rex Raptor had steeled himself and reached out to Joey, and only then did Hikaru get the chance to meet Solomon Muto. He definitely couldn't break the appointment and had to be on time. After all, this was not just his own matter. Looking at Rex Raptor's expression, Hikaru felt that this was probably a rare opportunity for Joey and Rex to reconcile. Whether from the perspective of personal development or helping a senior, he could not miss this. The opportunity recommended by the Paradox brothers was probably not a whim either. Considering that they were originally Pegasus's subordinates, it was possible that Pegasus himself wanted to duel Hikaru, or wanted to see if Hikaru had brought shame to the claw of Hermos, and had deliberately arranged this. This timeline was basically fixed. After meeting Grandpa Solomon, visit other legendary duelists, then duel, then quickly fly to Industrial Illusions. Before all that, Hikaru had to visit Witchcrafter Alley, because according to the spellcasters there, the Witchcrafter Madam would only stay for 1 day after returning. Diligent and responsible as she was, it was impossible for her to wait for Hikaru indefinitely. If he missed her, he'd have to wait an unknown amount of time again. And after finishing his Witchcrafter business, Hikaru had to go to the Magician Domain. He had to find Professor Banner, find Alistair the Invoker, and fulfill the promise from a year ago. Looking at it this way, time really is tight, Tiara said, eating another small cake, then frowning and drawing a blue cross in the air. Hikaru took a deep breath and nodded. Not only that. I also have to cooperate with Vice-Chancellor Growler on operations, he continued. The Vice-Chancellor has been working on next year's funding issues. Because of the fusion forces, he has to consider whether enrollment at Duel Academy will plummet next year. And as the champion, I have to cooperate with him. In fact, a few days ago, Hikaru had already met with Duel Academy's partners, and even encountered many fans from the partners' families. Some girls had even staged accidental encounters and chance meetings with him, unaware that Tiara had already warned him from many meters away. He sighed deeply. Although it was really time-consuming and exhausting, he couldn't just ignore it. After all, he had received considerable help from Vice-Chancellor Growler. Several times in previous duels, if it weren't for the cards Growler had provided, he really might have lost. No matter what, he couldn't just enjoy the benefits without accepting responsibility. So he still had to help. However, just a few days after Hikaru returned to Duel Academy, Growler hurriedly stopped all partner invitations and drove away all fans who had come to see Hikaru. It wasn't that the Academy's strategy had changed. Rather, Hikaru's sudden explosion of popularity. No, to be precise, it was adding fuel to the fire. Because in the past 2 days, Kaiba Corp had suddenly released footage of Hikaru's duel with Leo Akaba in the Synchro Dimension. Although many parts were cut, the fact that Hikaru had defeated Leo Akaba and even used Pendulum completely ignited the enthusiasm of almost everyone who saw it. After all, Hikaru was already the GX champion, and now these two revelations came in succession. What did that prove? It proved that Hikaru's fusion was more fusion than the fusion force's fusion. It proved that Hikaru, who defeated Leo Akaba, was truly a genuine and pure fusionist. It proved that Hikaru's commercial value was skyrocketing. Academy partners, news companies, and duel-related enterprises immediately swarmed into Duel Academy as if they'd caught a scent. Private planes nearly filled the Academy's airstrip, and ships from various countries and companies packed the harbor of Academy Island. This really put Vice-Chancellor Growler in a difficult position. Growler wanted Duel Academy to be famous, but being too famous was also a problem. He wanted Hikaru to become famous, but if he became too famous, Hikaru would be blocked by countless fans and reporters even when walking down the road. How could he study and be a duelist then? Under these circumstances, Growler changed his previous strategy and told Hikaru to go hide quickly. Fortunately, the time had come. Hikaru arrived in an ancient alley. The sun shone on the ground, not scorching, but warmly making people feel a bit lazy. All around, different kinds of spirits were coming and going. Some spellcasters, and also warriors. Some members of Witchcrafter Alley were shouting and introducing their latest creations. Hikaru stretched. Finally here. Witchcrafter Alley. Chapter 529. Hello, I have an appointment. Hikaru and Tiara arrived at the General Guild Hall in Witchcrafter Alley. Near the alley, there was a continuous stream of bustling customers. This was Witchcrafter Alley, a famous equipment manufacturing alley. Before the Spirit World dimension split, it was already well known. After the split, due to its unique characteristics, this dimension became a central hub similar to Spellbook Academy. Unlike Spellbook Academy, which was a dimension where spellcasters exchanged skills, and unlike the Magician Academy, which was a super-large training institution, Witchcrafter Alley was straightforward. You paid, then bought or ordered robes, weapons, and dolls crafted by the witchcrafters, and then worked toward a certain goal. At first glance, ordinary people might be confused seeing a spellcaster faction selling weapons and accessories, thinking that spellcasters didn't need weapons, so why would such a strange faction exist? But in fact, that line of thinking was too simplistic. Dual spirits were very peculiar creatures. As long as they strived in a certain way, they could potentially transform into other spirits. Naturally, this also included their appearance. For example, Chaz XYZ Dragon Cannon and A to Z Dragon Bustard Cannon looked completely identical at first glance, both having cannons, dragon heads, and tracks. However, A to Z Dragon Bustard Cannon's design was much more modern and advanced. Similarly, the same logic applied to Flame Swordsman and Flame Swordsman of Neo. Larger armor, a wider sword, stronger flames. These were all ways for spirits to evolve. What Witchcrafter Alley provided was a similar type of accessory. Not only that, they also sold a specific accessory that allowed buyers to lock their state, preventing them from evolving in a certain direction. For instance, some warrior spirits might have accumulated enough experience and seemed ready to evolve, but didn't want to become other warrior monsters. They could customize items here to lock their evolution path, preventing that transformation. This was why Witchcrafter Alley was famous in the spirit world. Precisely because of this, there were many interdimensional travelers here. Not only Hikaru, but many other dimensional travelers were present. The only difference was that they were spirits, and Hikaru was human. The front desk was handled by a witch of the Black Forest. She checked the records, looked up at Hikaru, whispered 2 exclamations, and then hesitated. "Let me speak." Just as she didn't know how to begin, a female spirit interrupted her hesitation and walked over. Hikaru looked over and immediately knew he had found the right person. The spirit wore a black tight leather outfit, leather skirt, and high-heeled leather boots so long they almost looked like pants. She had an outstanding appearance, with a slight blue highlight in her hair. It was Witchcrafter Hain, the Witchcrafter artisan and seamstress. She was also Witchcrafter Alley's acting leader. Her appearance meant that Hikaru's trip was at least not in vain. "I'm very sorry, Hikaru-sama." Hain bowed slightly in apology, then said with a hint of helplessness. "We had an agreement to introduce you to Madame Vere today, but I apologize. Although she has returned, we haven't seen her. In fact, we're looking for her right now. You can wait here for a while. We will definitely find her for you today." Not surprising, was it? Hikaru was not at all surprised that something like this would happen. No wonder today's front desk was a witch of the Black Forest. Previously, it was always a Witchcrafter member. It seemed she'd been called in temporarily to help. Hikaru didn't mind waiting. After all, he had waited this long, a few more minutes wouldn't hurt. But he clearly overestimated Madame Vere's reliability. He waited for a full hour until Tiara became impatient and wanted to help the Witchcrafters directly capture their Witchcrafter master. Finally, a witch in a splendid purple dress approached Hikaru and told him they had found Madame Vere. They could prepare the trial duel for him immediately. Upon hearing that a trial duel was about to begin, and that Madame Vere, one of the top spellcaster spirits who had never appeared publicly in Witchcrafter Alley, was going to personally duel someone, the spirits browsing the alley immediately became excited and gathered at the Crystal Plaza. It was a pure white duel field, surrounded by transparent crystals on all sides. Several Witchcrafters were talking to a sleepy-eyed little girl. They spoke very quickly, complaining about her being a hands-off manager while also saying they were all extremely busy and she was still sleeping soundly. The little girl listened, occasionally nodding, until she suddenly jolted awake. She flipped in the air, slightly startled, then yawned. Oh dear, oh dear. Master is very busy. I've had so many things lately. I finally came home, and this is how you welcome me? What are you busy with? Exactly. Tell us." 3 high-level spirits gritted their teeth beside her. Is that Madame Vere? One of the founders of Spellbook Academy, a member of the 3 Sages? She looks unremarkable. She seems to have no fighting spirit at all. The spirits who came to watch observed for a moment and didn't sense much powerful dual energy, immediately feeling confused. Madame Vere yawned, ignoring what the other spirits were saying. There are many people who come to us for entry into the magician domain. Why be so serious? Besides, didn't I entrust all these matters to you? Madame Vere, this is different. Hain retorted from the side. Hikaru was different. What's different? Madame Vere yawned again, looking at Hikaru and Tiara beside him. Midrash, huh? That's quite impressive. She gently raised her hand, and from the countless transparent crystals nearby, several suddenly flew out and landed in front of her. Then, with a snap, they shattered, transforming into a dual disc. She gently drew with her finger, and cards were born at her fingertips, finally forming her deck. No matter what, a duel will suffice. Madame Vere looked at Hikaru. So, let's duel. If you can win, I will give you the 3 Sages authentication, allowing you the opportunity to visit the magician domain. Hikaru nodded, thanked her, and his dual disc automatically activated. Witchcrafter Madame Vere LP, 4000. Hikaru LP, 4000. Madame Vere took the first turn. She casually tapped the dual disc, and a card automatically flew from her deck. Who is that person dueling Madame Vere? He looks somewhat familiar. I feel like I've seen him somewhere. Strange. I haven't seen humans many times, so why do I feel this human looks familiar? Occasionally, a few passing spirits couldn't help but murmur. To them, humans generally looked similar most of the time, but if a person left an impression on them, they could distinguish one. They seemed to vaguely have memories of Hikaru, yet surprisingly, seemed to have never actually met him. This was very strange. My turn. Madame Vere casually placed a spell card on the dual disc. I activate the spell card, Witchcrafter Creation. Add 1 Witchcrafter monster from my deck to my hand. As the duel began, a line of Witchcrafter members had already gathered behind Madame Vere. Besides Hain, there were many others. Roughly looking, most of them had several duplicates of the same spirit. Even Witchcrafter Adele, a high-level spirit, had 2 copies present. I add Witchcrafter Shmieta to my hand. Witchcrafter Shmieta, an energetic red-haired witch carrying a giant mechanical wrench. Normal summon Shmieta. Then activate her effect. During either player's main phase, I contribute this card and discard 1 spell card from my hand to special summon 1 Witchcrafter monster from my deck, except Shmieta. She shattered a transparent crystal in front of her with a snap and spoke softly. Special summon myself. In the sky, a white transparent sofa slowly emerged. She leaned back on the sofa, leisurely looking ahead. Witchcrafter Madame Vere Level 8, Light, Spellcaster, Def 2800. The effect of Shmieta in the graveyard. Banish her to send 1 Witchcrafter card from my deck to the graveyard, except Shmieta. I send Witchcrafter Adele to the graveyard. Behind her, 2 Ororo copies showed embarrassed expressions. Apparently, having grown into a high-level spellcaster spirit, she was still a bit embarrassed by that name. Activate continuous spell, Witchcrafter Bystreet. The transparent crystals around them changed colors, and in a short while, they reflected the scene of the alley outside, not only replicating the buildings vividly but also making the pedestrians on the road lifelike. This card allows a Witchcrafter monster once per turn to not be destroyed by battle or card effects. She generously explained the effect. She yawned. That's how it ends. It ends just like that? Several spirits were a bit surprised. They had expected to see some astonishing duel, but it turned out to be just 2 monsters placed on the field, and then it ended. It wasn't that the 2 weren't strong, but it just didn't feel like it matched the prestige of the 3 sages. But soon, they discovered it was actually far from that simple. At the moment the turn ends, the effect of the spell card in the graveyard activates. The effect of Witchcrafter Collaboration, discarded for Shmieta's cost. If a Witchcrafter monster exists on your field during your end phase, this card returns to your hand. Unfortunately, they can only activate one of 2 effects per turn, so creation cannot be recovered. A crystal card slowly recondensed and flew back into Madame Ver's hand. That meant in at most 2 turns, Madame Ver could repeat the same procedure, following the same steps as this turn? Looking at it that way, wasn't it almost equivalent to a special summon with virtually no cost? Perhaps even Witchcrafter Bystreet operated in the same way. As expected of one of the highest-ranking spellcasters. Her application of magic was truly remarkable. Chapter 530. My turn, draw. It was Hikaru's turn. Hikaru glanced at his hand, then looked at his opponent. Madame Ver was still yawning. She looked genuinely tired. Tiara had told Hikaru the same thing. This spirit, Witchcrafter Madame Ver, was not simply slacking off. From a soul analysis, she was indeed very tired, even exhausted. This was actually slightly different from the original source. The true Madame Ver was the type who was very good at slacking off and whose ideal was to find a place to slack off forever. But no matter what, the opponent was indeed a little distracted. Activate spell card, Toy Vendor. Add 1 Edge Imp monster and 1 Polymerization from my deck to my hand. I add Polymerization and Edge Imp Sabers to my hand. Toy Vendor? Madame Ver heard the card's name, looked up slightly, and mumbled. Is that from the spirit dimension that invaded the XYZ human world? Hikaru accurately caught this remark and was immediately surprised. She even knew about that? Then, I activate the spell card I just added, Polymerization, to fusion summon by combining Edge Imp Sabers from my hand with Fluffle Penguin from my hand. Fusion summon. Frightfur Tiger. A sharp blade suddenly pierced through the middle of a plush tiger, and a pair of scissors split the monster in 2, roaring as it appeared. Frightfur Tiger Level 6, Dark, Fiend, ATK 1900. When Frightfur Tiger is fusion summoned, I can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used, and destroy them. Then, the effect of Fluffle Penguin, if it is sent to the GY as fusion material for a Frightfur monster, draw 2 cards, then discard 1. Hikaru pointed at Madame Ver. I'll destroy you. A fusion that destroys monsters? It feels more and more familiar. The surrounding spirits whispered, finding Hikaru increasingly recognizable. Oof. Madame Ver saw this, couldn't help but become a little serious, and picked up a card in her hand. Activate my own effect. During either player's turn, discard 1 spell card from my hand. All face-up monsters on your opponent's field have their effects negated until the end of the turn. Discard Witchcrafter Collaboration. She gently raised her hand, and countless threads surrounded Frightfur Tiger, sealing it like a doll in a museum. Wow! So strong. Cannot be destroyed by battle or effects, can discard spell cards to negate all monsters on the field, has 2800 DF, and can recover all spell cards from the graveyard every turn? Hiss, truly worthy of a member of the highest-ranking spellcaster 3 Sages. It had to be said that her effect was indeed very strong, and combined with her ATK boosting effect, it became even stronger. At least in this world, she alone was enough to resolve most situations. However, it was only most. Hikaru drew 2 cards from his deck, glanced at them, and sent Metalfoes Fusion to the graveyard. Activate the effect of Metalfoes Fusion in the GY. Return it to the deck, shuffle, and draw 1 card. Fusion again? Madame Ver couldn't help but tilt her head. How many fusions are you going to use? How many? The answer is all of them. Madame Ver was slightly stunned, then couldn't help but start to frown. She vaguely felt that someone had said something similar to Hikaru's words to her, but she had been too busy recently and couldn't quite recall the details. And while she was struggling to remember, the surrounding spirits finally, through those words which weren't a direct sign but almost immediately brought it to mind, realized Hikaru's identity. It's him, it's him. It's Hikaru. The absolute fusion wielder, the human who pursues ultimate fusion. The GX champion from the fusion dimension. That person who pursues infinite fusion. The spirits immediately erupted, talking endlessly about Hikaru. Unlike the people in the synchro dimension who hadn't known Hikaru. Although these spirits had not seen Hikaru with their own eyes, in the spirit world, Hikaru's previous duel footage had spread widely. Many spirits had heard of him and knew his deeds. At this moment, Madame Vere was completely startled. "It's the one Alistair asked me about." She looked back at Hain, who stood with her chest out and head held high, as if to say, "I told you this guest is different, but you wouldn't listen." She shook her head. She certainly couldn't complain about Hain right now. After all, it was her own fault for not listening properly, thinking it was just another overconfident warrior. She hadn't expected such a celebrity. She had been busy with something very important to the spirit world, so she didn't have free time to watch popular duel footage, and now it seemed she was a bit out of touch. Interesting. So many spirits, and even Hain was so excited about this duelist, which made her develop some interest in Hikaru. Absolute fusion wielder, interesting. Let me see what your fusion looks like. She watched Hikaru with curiosity. She was still very confident. Then, I activate the spell card, Fusion Recovery. Return polymerization from the GY and Fluffle Penguin from the GY to my hand. And then, he looked at his extra deck. It was a perfect opportunity to test the card that the alchemist had analyzed from the power of the Light of Destruction. Activate spell card, Polymerization. The fusion condition is one monster special summon from the extra deck and one monster from the hand. Such high requirements. Almost all the spirits present exclaimed internally. I fusion summon by combining Frightfur Tiger on the field and Edgem Chain from my hand. Hikaru raised his right hand. A purple vortex formed in his palm, and then light shone above the two dimensions. Hikaru felt as if he was in the starry sky, the universe itself. Combine, combine. A step further toward fusion. Fusion summon. Level 8. Frightfur Meister. ZZZZZZZ. A harsh screeching sound rang out, and in front of Hikaru, a fiend appeared with movements almost identical to his own. This fiend gathered the surrounding fusion power, transforming it into a vortex. Combined with the vortex in the sky, this monster was like fusion itself. Hikaru felt as if he could see a giant fiendish form made of light, lowering its head and looking at him with red, alluring eyes. It worked! Magnum the Reliever, Level 8, Light, Fiend, ATK 2800. That wraps up this part of What If Fusion Deck User in a Different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.